If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 21. 21 Merlin. Touching upon such a sorrowful topic, you and your companions consciously chose to quickly move past it. Apologies, I might have overstepped, Alvin. If you don't mind, consider our home as your own in the future. Thank you for your kindness, but I'm used to a wandering life. Being without a fixed abode is the norm for me now. Facing Kay's kindness, you shook your head to politely refuse, then paused before smiling again. But in the future, I'm afraid I might become a frequent visitor. With superb culinary skills and the charm of a handsome youth, you quickly closed the gap between you and Kay. Soon, you became like brothers. After understanding your needs, he patted his chest, saying that such trivial matters were on him and not worth mentioning. You then set out for the small courtyard that the siblings built outside the town, where you met their father, Sir Hector. The old knight, with white hair at his temples, was sweeping autumn leaves in the backyard. His well-trained figure remained upright, showing no signs of aging fatigue. Old soldiers never die, nor do they even wither away. Looking at his back, you couldn't help but think of your own old man, Vortigern. As contemporaries in that era, they shared a similar resolute temperament. Separated from home for several months, the old man might be feeling lonely. It's time to go back and visit. Upon seeing your face, the old knight's gaze involuntarily paused for a moment. However, with the introduction from the siblings, he quickly understood your intentions. So that's how it is. If you fancy any plot of land, feel free to use it. Renting seems a bit formal. The contributions you've made to the town have made us old folks feel ashamed. This wheat field at home, let my son, Artorias, show you around. He's more familiar with the nearby terrain as he works on the farm daily. Sir Hector smiled, and his words were kind and graceful. However, his gaze kept scanning the silver-haired youth. Really like. The more he looked, the more it felt alike. Recalling the past days when he served under Uther, Hector's expression seemed slightly trance-like. Yes, as such an important figure serving as Artorias' foster father, he couldn't be a fallen old knight, but rather the most trusted Uther's personal guard. In fact, Hector didn't have any eccentric, reclusive personality. The reason for living in such a remote suburb, far from the town, was to raise Artoria. Since his youth, he had served in the royal court as Uther's personal guard. At that time, the relationship between the royal brothers was very harmonious. Therefore, Hector was one of the few who had seen the young face of Vortigern. Maybe it was just his illusion? The silver-haired young man in front of him, whether it was his appearance or temperament, he was so similar to that highness. No, now he should be called Vile King, right? Although Hector didn't really like to use this title. As Uther's personal guard, he had witnessed the harmonious relationship between the royal brothers. To say that Vortigern had been disguising himself for many years in concealment was too sensational. Unfortunately, he couldn't interfere in the hidden secrets. Moreover, that highness couldn't have any offspring. No matter how powerful a woman was, she was still just a human. Therefore, it was impossible for her to conceive the bloodline of a dragon. So, maybe it really was just his illusion. His gaze stayed on Alvin's face, and the old knight's expression was a bit trance-like until his well-behaved daughter waved her hand, bringing Hector back to reality. Father. Seizing the opportunity of having guests, she finally dared to call out. The golden-haired girl smiled. Addressing oneself as a father with the noble status of a red dragon, how could he bear the title? Helplessly glaring at the girl, Hector smiled gently at Alvin. I'm sorry. Seeing you reminds me of an old friend. As one gets older, it's easy to get lost in thought. Well, sweeping is a bit tiresome now. If you have any business, just tell my unruly sons. Take a break, father. Following the old knight as he pushed open the wooden door to the backyard, Alvin maintained a flawless smile on his face. Now, if he fully restrained his breath and hid, even the concealing magecraft from someone like Morgan would be challenging. In other words, he didn't think Hector could recognize the white dragon's bloodline on him. However, the old knight's trance-like expression. Was he recognized? No, listening to his words, could it be that he resembled his father when he was young? Well, that is to say, just speculation. Even so, Alvin had already prepared for the moment his identity was not exposed. He wouldn't give up this chance to subtly influence Artoria, even if he had to infiltrate the enemy's camp. Beyond the northern Orkney Islands, a land known for its beautiful women. Traversing the islands with the consciousness of a nightmare, the distance of thousands of miles poses no obstacle to communication. As if in a trance, there seems to be a premonition. The magus of flowers, surrounded by the teasing laughter of beautiful women, suddenly opened his transparent and gem-like deep purple eyes. His profound gaze seemed to penetrate the dome of this noisy tavern and, with a slightly furrowed brow, looked towards the distant southeast. These clairvoyants, capable of observing everything in the mortal world, akin to a miracle, instantly glimpsed the scene in that courtyard. Hector, Lily, K. Seems like nothing unusual. Then, why has my right eyelid been twitching? I see, it must be some women thinking of me. The miraculous clairvoyants did not observe the figure of the white dragon's son. Therefore, the always unrestrained Merlin quickly dismissed such meaningless omens. Oh dear, nothing seems to be happening. Let's continue drinking. Served with fragrant fruit wine, the magus smiled and comfortably rested his head between the bosoms of the beautiful women. After drinking, there was still a phase of deeper communication. Tasting the flavor of women is something one can never get enough of. A day of leisure, hook, and enclosure for music. There's still a long night ahead to give a lesson to his adorable disciple. Chapter 22, 22 Anchor of the Planet. The anticipated revelation of your identity has yet to arrive, and your life remains as tranquil and stable as ever. As you exhale a sigh of relief, curiosity about the enigmatic Merlin intensifies within you. This grand magus, scorned by Morgan and labeled as the scum of humanity, leaves you wondering whether he has failed to recognize your true self or is simply keeping his knowledge concealed. Could he possibly be engaged in trivial pursuits while neglecting significant matters? For each additional day spent by Artorias' side, the influence from the son of the White Dragon deepens subtly. If Merlin remains indifferent, allowing his disciple to be taken away would be an irreversible mistake. Nevertheless, whatever schemes he may be plotting, the magus's absence aligns more closely with your intentions. Choosing a fertile plot from Sir Ector's fields in the outskirts, you embark on the preparations for your botanical research. With thoughts of your own elderly and lonely father back home, your visits to Londinium become more frequent. Often, you bring carefully crafted gifts for Morgan. However, before each encounter, you discreetly remove the ring from your left hand. The ring engraved with your name, intended as a gift for the witch, is meticulously packaged and concealed in the shadows. Following British customs, reaching adulthood occurs at the age of 15. It seems the time for that has not yet arrived. Pretending to be oblivious to Morgan's caring gestures during your journeys, the witch also feigns ignorance about the pledge ring you have carved for her. In this unspoken ambiguity, the distance between you and Morgan draws closer. However, your father, Vortigern. Every time you make a deliberate effort to visit him, he rarely stays within the castle. Recently, the frequency of the Vile King's military campaigns has been escalating, yet they are not aimed at conquest. It appears he is urgently searching for something. Upon inquiring Morgan, she seems to have vague suspicions. I guess. Morgan furrowed her brows slightly. He wants to find the coordinates to the anchor of the planet. Anchor of the planet. Hearing a concept he had never encountered before, Alvin couldn't help but ask, what is that? The laws of the world are not fixed but evolve with the ages, Morgan spoke softly. Since the beginning of the Common Era, the connection between humans and gods has been severed, marking the decline of the Age of Gods. The true ether on Gaia gradually receded back into the inner sea of the planet. You are familiar with this knowledge, Alvin? Alvin nodded. Since his birth, Morgan had taught him many aspects of the Age of Gods magical knowledge that he had never heard of at the clock tower. In a universe where symmetry is considered beautiful, just as there is light, there is shadow, the world also has its reverse. This reverse is the inner sea of the planet. It shares the same coordinates as reality but is an entirely different realm, said to be vibrant and picturesque, like a blooming garden. It is also known as the reverse side of the world. Rather than a division like the Earth's crust, mantle, and core, it is closer to a spiritual or soul-like dimension within the realm of consciousness. Utopia, Eden, Avalon, Supreme Heaven, Promised Land. In different civilizations, the inner sea of the planet has many other names. According to Alvin's personal understanding, this thing is more or less what people call subspace. Furthermore, the laws of the world are not naturally occurring but, like a thin fabric, they cover the entire world, forming the various environments and rules we are accustomed to. Saying this, Morgan lifted her skirt, gently rubbing the delicate fabric between her fair fingertips. Then, she slightly punctured it. To prevent this fabric from drifting away, the laws were fixed to the surface like nails, and that is the anchor of the planet. Alvin was amazed. So, the physics of their moonlit world was like a piece of modesty cloth. This worldview is as fragile as glass. Alvin marveled at the low level of the moonlit world setting. No wonder they often have some kind of world-ending crisis. The witch's explanation was straightforward and easy to understand. She was indeed a genius among geniuses. However, why does that old man want to find the anchor of the planet? Although the bottom structure of the moonlit world was interesting, this was the question Alvin was more concerned about. As the secluded haven of the isolated islands, Britannia is the last piece of untainted land left from the Age of Gods. Standing at the top of the tower, Morgan's azure eyes gazed towards the endless coastline of the mainland. There is no legacy of the Age of Gods beyond the islands. Therefore, I guess he wants to pull out the anchor of the planet, loosen the world's laws, and halt the decline of the Age of Gods in Britannia. Isn't it a good thing to bring back the Age of Gods? Alvin frowned in confusion. If that were the case, why didn't Vortigern and Uther discuss it properly at the beginning? Why create the current situation of discord and reverence? The rich resources of the Age of Gods and the abundant magical energy would undoubtedly greatly accelerate the world's development. Magecraft is also a form of productivity. Although most magus were crazy for trying to chase the elusive route, resulting in a bunch of lunatics. From Alvin's modern perspective, technology is inherently neither good nor evil, only lacking effective guidance. Magus are crazy, so just keep beating them until they become normal. Keep hitting them until they become ordinary people. Magecraft is not such an inconvenient thing. The ease and freedom of casting Magecraft in the Age of Gods made Alvin feel a bit uncomfortable at the thought of returning to the ether-poor environment of the clock tower. From a moral and logical standpoint, if Vortigern wants to bring back the Age of Gods, it should be a good thing. If Uther wants to make Britannia great again, there is no reason to oppose it. However, the vile king prefers to be cursed by his own people, bringing in the foreign Saxons, risking the world's great dangers just to seize the throne. Why does Vortigern hide his intentions? It would be better to announce the decline of the Age of Gods to the world, and people would work together for its return. Alvin believed that there must be hidden factors in this matter. Who knows what my uncle is thinking? Well, I don't care at all. Morgan shook her head gently. Anyway, as long as Vortigern has a dispute with my dear father, I am willing to assist him. Facing her disciple, the witch's words were very sincere. She didn't care about what Vortigern wanted to do, she just wanted revenge against Uther, the stepfather who showed favoritism. How her mother, Igraine, became the vessel for the new king, and what kind of gloomy scene was her childhood. Morgan couldn't forget those pains, and no one had the right to ask her for forgiveness. And now, her vengeful attitude was somewhat fading, still remaining in the vile king's camp, or more precisely, mostly because of Alvin. Alvin Pendragon. Embarrassed to admit it, but she really couldn't do without this disciple. Moreover, Vortigern has no way to succeed, he knows it's nonsense, an utterly futile path. Recalling her conversation with the vile king, the witch couldn't help but feel emotional. The dream that the vile king pursued throughout his life was nothing more than a mirage, with a minuscule chance of realization. The so-called futile path. Vortigern was moving steadily toward the desperate cliff. This was one of the reasons she didn't want to intervene. Morgan knew her uncle's temperament, and it was meaningless to dissuade him from pursuing that moth-to-flame journey. He was, after all, the white dragon born for Britannia. Chapter 23, 23 Making her fall in love. Impossible to succeed. Why do you say that? Alvin discerned a sense of pity in Morgan's words. If even the Witch of Britannia said so, then the failure of his old man was almost inevitable. What was the reason behind the persistence of his old man? To shake the anchored laws of the world with the anchor of the planet is incredibly difficult, even for the white dragon. Let me put it this way, such an important thing cannot be without protection. On the island, there is no one now who can match Vortigern. However, in the inner sea of the planet, your father cannot obtain the bonus of the Britannian land, so just passing the hurdle of Lady of the Lake will be challenging for him. Even if, by some stroke of luck, he manages to obtain the anchor of the planet, removing it requires unlocking the restraints above. That is a seal engraved by the will of the world. Think about it. Can a guy like him, who is trying to interfere with the decline of the Age of Gods, gain the world's recognition. Saying this, the Witch of Britannia sighed softly. She didn't care about the return of the Age of Gods. Unless the world was completely destroyed, as long as mana did not dry up, whether the Age of Gods declined or not wouldn't shake the foundation of someone like Morgan. For high-level magus like them, whether or not there was an Age of Gods didn't make much difference. Alvin's ultimate life form body was the same. As long as he wanted to live, the young man almost had a lifespan as long as the earth. So, I advise you to stay away from your father a bit, Alvin. There are no wrong names, only inappropriate nicknames. He is, after all, a madman with the name of the demonic dragon. The usual kind and friendly appearance, let me tell you, only happens when he talks to you. The witch's words faded like lingering embers. Alvin chuckled helplessly. What the witch in front of him was not aware of was, she would only be so chatty when talking to him. Let's set aside such depressing topics for now. I have something important I want to share with you. Looking at the serious expression on the silver-haired youth's face, the witch's heart couldn't help but beat a bit faster. She knew that Alvin had carved a ring for her. Important matter. Could it be that he wants to propose to her? No, no. Alvin, you are still so young. And this is so sudden. How can anyone refuse this? Nervous. The heartbeat accelerated. Should she do it? Now? Right here? Did she mess up her makeup? I met the son of the Red Dragon. No choice, I'll reluctantly accept. Ah. So it's not that. The witch's blushing expression froze for a moment. In the midst of disappointment mixed with relief, she covered her chest and exhaled a long breath. I thought you were, wait, what did you just say? The brain, clogged with wild thoughts, finally realized the content of the young man's words. Morgan's expression suddenly became lively. I met your dear sister, Alvin repeated, alive and in a female form. You actually met my dear sister, like this. As her gaze became somewhat trance-like with memories, Morgan's tone also appeared to be somewhat mixed. Because of that Merlin's interference, I tried searching for a long time and got no results. It's no coincidence. It's probably because the dragon's blood in conflict attracts each other. His dragon's blood feels like a substitute envoy. Yes, her current name is Artorias. I met her disguised as a man in the Essex region to the east. Disguised as a man? Well, I understand. It's Merlin's style, always playing tricks. When it came to the scum of Britannia, Morgan's expression was somewhat gnashing of teeth. When Uther first proposed the concept of the artificial king, she saw this damn white-haired fellow so happy that he ran around inside the city of Londinium as if he had found some long-lost great fun. Damn it, what did Uther and this guy take her mother for? However, looking at the silver-haired youth in front of her, the witch's clenched palms eased slightly. This revenge would be repaid sooner or later. Without a doubt, she had already proven through her actions that her magecraft was more advanced than Merlin's, producing more outstanding works. No. Alvin was not a work. He was a living, breathing life. A child created by pouring in love. However, thinking of that sister, who had taken away her throne, her unknown younger sister. Due to resentment towards Uther's favoritism, Morgan had once harbored hatred. But in the time spent with Alvin, these resentments seemed to have dissipated long ago. From understanding how to give love to receiving it. At this moment, Morgan, towards the feelings Artoria held, was not so much hatred. It was more like pity. Just like herself. She, too, had never received Uther's love and was only treated as a useful tool. Thinking about it, Morgan couldn't help but ask with a somewhat complex expression. How is she now? Eating well, growing healthy and strong. Alvin recalled Artoria's bottomless stomach, and a slight cold sweat formed for Britannia's future. Undoubtedly has the potential to be a king, but her ideology is still too naive. Of course, even without using my brain, I know what Merlin teaches her every day, Morgan chuckled. Nothing more than some dull, lofty rhetoric about being a king. He doesn't act like a human himself and still wants to teach others to become a king. How ridiculous. Not acting like a human. Could it be that Merlin is also a dragon? The dragons in Britannia seem to be everywhere. Dragon? That guy is a half incubus, doesn't understand any human emotions. It's more accurate to say that he has no interest in anything except having fun. Got it, so he's a forgetful pleasure seeker. Realizing this, Alvin heard the witch add with a sneer. If you see him, Alvin, remember to protect yourself. Don't think there's a chance to kill him, what magus of flowers. That waste has first-class abilities when it comes to running away. It's a coincidence. His best skill is also escaping, so it seems they are evenly matched. With such a candid evaluation of Merlin from Morgan, Alvin engraved it in his heart. As for my sister. What do you think, Alvin? Artoria. Alvin pondered for a moment. If possible, I would like to avoid becoming enemies with her. To put it this way, it may sound a bit fanciful, but I think it's a great opportunity. If we can change Artoria's perspective and have her join our side, it would be a fatal blow to Uther and Merlin. No wonder you are my disciple. The witch listened and her mood became pleasant. A curve appeared involuntarily at the corner of her mouth. Indeed, Alvin, easily thinking of such a perfect plan. Yes. Just defeating the red dragon with force was not enough. Overcoming setbacks to become a king was essential. To truly strike at the arrogant hearts of Uther and Merlin, nothing was more insulting than having the red dragon defect to the side of the white dragon. But this kind of thing is not easy. How do you plan to do it specifically? The great desires of man, the love of food and sex, are the same for dragons. The silver-haired youth paused, smiling. So, it's very simple. Make her fall in love with me. Chapter 24, 24 I want to devour you, Alvin. You narrate all the various experiences you've had throughout your journey to Morgan, sparing no details. Much of your journey she had actually observed, and if there were genuine dangers, the witch had long tightened her nerves, ready to intervene at any moment. However, during the days when you finally met Artoria, she happened to escape due to shyness. After listening to your account of Artoria's recent situation, Morgan's face revealed an expression that seemed expected, yet carried a hint of pity. There was no love. Simply nurtured as a pure tool. Ha! Whether it was for the elder sister or the younger sister, Uther truly treated them equally. This familiar situation only intensified the witch's indignation towards the so-called father. Apart from that, there was the almost pitiful sorrow for Artoria. Exactly. Her sister, born without knowledge, created as a vessel for the ideal king, never had the chance to choose. What was there for her to hate? The girl named Artoria was like a puppet, suspended by borrowed ideals. If she could pull her into her own camp, it would indeed be a perfect revenge against Uther. However, even so, Morgan also had her own uncompromising principles. I disagree. In response to the silver-haired youth's proposal, the witch decisively refused. The resounding rejection made Alvin pause for a moment. He knew how much Morgan hated Uther, to the point where wishing to devour his flesh and drink his blood was not an exaggeration. Why would she let go of such a perfect opportunity to strike at his heart? I don't oppose you contacting my sister, Alvin. Because of the attraction of dragon blood, you two will inevitably meet, and it's better sooner rather than later when she is still not fully in her element. Staring at her disciple, Morgan's complex gaze seemed to contain a myriad of emotions. The reason for my refusal is simple. Saying so, the witch lifted her fair hand. Then, she slowly and gently stroked the youth's face. The thin and deep blue lips slightly pursed. Through the contact with the skin, Alvin could feel her delicate fingertips trembling slightly. But soon, this inexplicable tension subsided with her breath. The witch looked directly at her dream, at her heart, without any hesitation. In such moments, she would never retreat again. However, the first time expressing it so unreservedly, it was somewhat embarrassing. The sky was clear, not a cloud in sight. The pleasant, warm autumn sunlight filtered through the window grates, caressing the shoulders. The radiant light illuminated the mountains and rivers with a dawn glow, and the blue and red autumn leaves reflected in Morgan's pale and translucent skin, spreading to her smooth neck. This autumn atmosphere, like the surging emotions, had matured into the sweet fruit that tempted people in this maple-colored autumn day. At some point, the witch no longer felt that she would be burned by this warm light. Even if it's just acting, I won't allow you to treat yourself as a pawn. I won't allow such a thing. Because, you are something that belongs to me, Alvin. The witch raised her fair cheek, pressing it against the youth's forehead. The silver hair, flowing down, caught a few strands between her lips. Her lowered deep blue eyes. Almost face to face, she and the deep iron-grey eyes stared at each other. Sorry. Do you hate me for this? Not at all. Rather, he quite liked it. The feeling of being needed. That was what intoxicated people. Looking at Morgan's eyes, looking at the witch's face, rosy like a ripe fruit. Yes, Alvin thought, she might have become one of the few things he would feel reluctant to part with in this life called Alvin. Vibrant, mature, tempting, deadly. And in his heart, the overwhelming possessiveness that surged, ready to overflow. Faced with the witch's unrestrained expression, Alvin lifted his hand, gently squeezing her palm. Understood, I will maintain a distance as friends with her. Also, your hand, as always, it's very cold. As the words fell, the witch with azure eyes gently guided the young man's hand, slowly placing it on her cheek. Elasticity. And then softness. That moist warmth, like flawless white gem, formed a perfect arc from bone to flesh, extending from the collarbone down a profound curve, like a staircase leading to heaven, tempting one to climb. So, warm me up a bit more for me. Staring at the enchanting witch. The gaze, frozen, couldn't be diverted, and the sluggish nerves couldn't speak. At such times, any words seemed redundant. So, the young man leaned in and gently kissed the witch's lips. This is my answer, which I have never wavered from, Lady Morgan. The alluring charm in her eyes was endless, and saliva and warmth exchanged freely. The clasped fingers were drawn downward, climbing the undulating curve. Not enough. The witch, with breath like orchids, whispered softly into the young man's ear. I want to devour you, Alvin. The bedroom curtains closed silently. Alvin involuntarily leaned back, falling into the dream named ambiguity. Under the gentle touch of autumn light, the earthly realm shone with clarity. The vast wheat fields resembled a golden sea, and a girl, practicing swordplay with the techniques learned from her predecessors, gracefully swung her sword amidst the radiant wheat, her flowing golden hair swaying in the wind like the brilliant wheat field. Today, Artorias, also known as Artoria, seemed unusually full of vigor. One could argue that she had been consistently happy lately. Even the monotonous repetition of sword strikes couldn't erase the smile that adorned her cheeks. The reason for her joy lay in the reunion with a friend she had longed for, someone she admired as a senior. Moreover, she had learned a great deal from Alvin, both in combat skill and knowledge, content she had never encountered before. This progress propelled her immature self several steps closer to the realm of a true king. Ah, how could the world bring forth so many joyous events in such succession? During this period, it felt as if the girl had stepped into a time of bliss, much like a dream. To the point that she couldn't help but associate every topic with her idol. It seemed impossible to erase that figure from her mind. Artoria raised her gaze, looking towards the distant woods, observing the swirling branches and leaves. The falling leaves danced in the autumn breeze, and the splendid autumn light cascaded with the wind. The withering colors floated along the clear stream like an exquisite painting. Standing amidst this picturesque scene, the girl's heart, filled with youthful exuberance, was connected to the distant name, Alvin. What was he doing at this very moment? Surely, he was traveling and diligently practicing, immersed in both exploration and self-discipline. Anne. The intoxicated panting resonated around, swaying and undulating. Accompanied by a seductive warmth, the air carried a misty sensation, gently caressing Alvin's face like the soft waves of the sea. If described using the artistry of rhetoric, the azure witch was meticulously savoring the silver-haired youth. Miss Witch, astride, moved her body as if the willow leaves swaying in the wind, continuously undulating. Moist beads of sweat slid down from the collarbone to the tips of the hair, dripping onto Alvin's chest. It wasn't a matter of taking the initiative but completely being crushed by the tire. The youth seemed like water being manipulated at will, flowing all the way into those profound valleys. The notifications from the simulator kept refreshing, but the host had long lost the ability to pay attention. You've received mana transfer from the witch, your magical energy has slightly increased. You've received mana transfer from the witch, your magical energy has slightly increased. You've received mana transfer from the witch, your magical energy has slightly increased. You've received multiple mana transfers from the witch, your magical energy limit has been raised. Chapter 25, 25 Living is for peace of mind. The intense battle raged on for a full day and night, only relenting with the faint light of the rising sun on the horizon. The witch, seemingly unsatisfied, finally released her restraint. The soreness in your waist and abdomen didn't last long, as the ultimate life form, your strength had somewhat recovered. Amidst the tender moments with the witch, you inquired why she didn't personally go to meet her sister. Morgan fell silent for a moment, eventually shaking her head gently. Alvin, your birth has never been revealed to the public, so Britain is still unaware of your identity. Although I don't know why Merlin hasn't detected your white dragon blood, or what he's scheming, if I get close, that guy will surely become alert. Based on these considerations, Morgan decided it would be better for you to approach Artoria alone. Having personally experienced the endurance of your body, Morgan believed that few in Britain could pose a threat to your life, not even Merlin. So, before you leave, hold me a little longer. You embraced Morgan's usually cool body tightly, and soon, the tremors of the bed became even more intense than before. Without any romantic words, you responded to the witch's unrestrained demands with rough actions. As the long and fleeting moments passed, the witch finally lay satisfied and languid on the bed, her silky silver hair scattered on the damp sheets. After kissing her lips, you left the castle, never forgetting to come back and nourish the land-named witch with your presence. Time passed swiftly, and the weather in the Age of Gods was always favorable. Britain's winter was exceptionally short, quickly transitioning into this bright spring day. In the fertile fields already fertilized, you sowed carefully crafted crop seeds engraved with ethereal absorption runes and constructed an array to gather the ley lines of this land. In your view, the issue of food was often the foundation of a country. With the magecraft, you aimed to cultivate improved crop varieties during this Age of Gods, achieving a significant increase in yield. Feeding the people was the most crucial state affair. During the leisure of the farming season, it was the time for you and Artoria to engage in sword training. Practicing with such an excellent instructor as you seemed to stimulate the instinctual struggle within her dragon blood. She was rapidly becoming stronger at a pace of almost one step per day. Every passing day, the muscular strength contained in her red dragon body became more substantial. However, as the ultimate life form, your progress would only be higher, stronger, and more exaggerated than hers. Through the continuous battles between you, Artoria's sword skills were almost entirely seen through and mastered by you. In these months, she had never once gained even a slight advantage in your hands. The broken wooden swords on the ground became more and more. However, despite the predictable and overwhelming defeats each time, it seemed not to have affected her optimistic and positive mindset in the slightest. But, you were not in a hurry to succeed. After all, birds of a feather flock together. To let this pure dragon heart fall into darkness, you knew it required a long and profound influence. Days passed smoothly, and under your subtle influence, Artoria's swordsmanship gradually carried an edge that was not present before. With the lengthening of time, the friendship between you two became deeper and more profound. Apart from the topic of lineage, which you both tacitly avoided, you almost formed a relationship where nothing was off limits. Your knowledge from 2 lifetimes surpassed even the great Magus Merlin, who was a half-incubus. Due to the limitations of this era, if we were to talk about teaching prowess, Merlin wouldn't hold a candle to you. Therefore, the questions that Artoria had been unable to understand for a long time, you could easily enlighten her with just a bit of guidance. You could significantly perceive that she was becoming more and more dependent on you. Spring's warm breeze brushed over the snow-capped mountains of the northern frozen plains, caressing the outskirts of towns with budding green grass. Britannia, favored by the Age of Gods, once again displayed a vibrant scene of flourishing life, a spectacle of all things thriving. On the wheat fields, the perplexed voice of the young girl echoed in the wind. Alvin, why do the lords hoard so many knights and horses but are unwilling to clear out bandits and magical beasts? Recalling Merlin's lesson on imperial arts from last night, the Magus of Flowers advised her to abandon human emotions and emulate her father, the king, to become an indifferent being, transcending everything, to grow into a qualified ruler. Is indifference and ruthlessness the path to kingship? The golden-haired girl pondered, unable to make sense of the logic here. She turned to Alvin for guidance. If people live in peace and prosperity, wouldn't the towns become more prosperous in turn? Town prosperity doesn't necessarily mean the lord's finances are abundant. Humans are selfish beings, no one willingly considers their hard-earned labor as taxes. Alvin glanced at the golden-haired girl and asked, Artorias, have you ever thought, what is it that people live for? What people live for? The girl furrowed her brow, pondering for a moment. Isn't it to pursue goodness and righteousness? No, unfortunately, you're quite wrong, far off the mark. The silver-haired youth spoke softly, his words as elusive as the wind's whispers. It's for peace of mind. Peace of mind. The girl murmured, repeating the phrase. Yes, people live for peace of mind. Alvin shifted his gaze to the lush green expanse. 5 days after the beginning of spring, signs of spring were everywhere. The daylight gradually lengthened, and the azure clouds seemed ready to fall. Cracks in the remaining ice, vibrant red buds on new branches. Encountering everything, one feels joyful. Love for spring is not exclusive to oneself. Full of vitality, everything competes and thrives. Despite the apparent prosperity, the hardships of humanity, age of gods or not, remained unchanged. More food, greater wealth, stronger power, longer life. Even forming relationships, sacrifice, and even realizing ideal aspirations, all of it is merely to achieve peace of mind. Throughout their lives, people are chasing after things that bring them peace of mind. But peace of mind also means stagnation and contentment. How can livestock be content? If cows and horses stop moving, the millstones for wheat won't turn, and people won't have fine flour to enjoy. Therefore, for humans, cows and horses must bear the burden of being cows and horses, and their offspring must continue the cycle. So, lords must instill fear in the populace. Only when they feel insecure can they be compelled, under the guise of defense, to conscript people and collect taxes. Alvin smiled meaningfully. Artorias, if you were a lord, would you bother to expend effort to eradicate bandits and beasts? As the words faded away, even the sound of the wind seemed to dissipate. In this silent stillness, the girl remained in a daze for a long time. Alvin, the way you put it. She hesitated. Lords and bandits, aren't they essentially the same? Exactly, exploiting the fruits of others' labor is one of the nobility's essential traits. You understand this very insightfully, Artorias. Alvin smiled. Human beings are creatures who, in pursuit of peace of mind, choose to indulge in desire. To attain peace of mind, they are willing to entrust their lives to more powerful entities, be it lords, gods, or that so-called thing called a king. What people truly want is an immaculate savior. However, in this world, where can one find a perfect and ideal ruler that satisfies everyone? It's nothing but a delusion. Chapter 26, 26 Before becoming a king, become a human. Is the purpose of human existence, peace of mind? The young girl silently digested the logic behind these words while leisurely half-lying on the green and vibrant wheat field of this spring day. Alvin, with a mouthful of ancient camphor leaves he casually picked from the forest, chewed slowly, savoring the bitter taste. Have you heard it too? Ever since I haven't shown up in the town lately, the complaints from the people about Silver Star guiding the way. Broaching such a disheartening topic, the girl's expression couldn't help but darken. Alvin's collection of crop seeds had already reached completion, and so, Silver Star guiding the way disappeared from the people's view. After a brief lull, mountain bandits, like locusts, began to roam freely once they realized the silver-haired deathly youth seemed to have truly departed. Thieves couldn't be completely eradicated, and in times of turmoil, the line between refugees and bandits was often thin. Unable to receive Alvin's almost selfless help anymore, the murmurs of discontent among the people spread far and wide. They didn't dare to curse the Lord's private soldiers who neglected their duties because they would indeed retaliate. For good people, however, accusations could be freely made without fearing consequences. Even though Alvin had never made any promises and emphasized multiple times that he was not a knight. Nevertheless, accusations like Silver Star guiding the way is a fraud, it's actually in cahoots with the bandits. Ignoring evil without fulfilling duties, no knightly spirit at all. That guy just wants to take away the loot from the bandits, it's obvious that it was taken from us. And even more unpleasant words than these. The girl had experienced enough during this period. Alvin didn't need to look to know how she wore such a dim expression now. Ha ha ha. Artoria, do you really like Britannia so much? Then, I'll let you witness whether this king is worth your commitment. Feeling the twisted satisfaction surging within his heart. The gentle and persuasive voice of the young man slowly echoed in the girl's ears. Unfortunately, but this is the truth, Artorias. Gratitude for small favors may bring tears of appreciation, and repaying great kindness might make one uneasy. Unrepayable favors might even lead to animosity between parties, because the beneficiary, unable to find peace of mind, can only escape or belittle the other's motives. Man is inherently selfish. Without selfishness, one cannot be called human. You seem to be unable to understand such things. Because, you never considered yourself as a human, so noble, so kind, always thinking for others. In your heart, there has never been a place for yourself. Alvin lifted his gaze and looked toward the elusive clouds. If you don't understand human thoughts, how can you talk about ruling? Sages can console the people, but they cannot lead them. If you discard the selfishness of being human, then how can you become a qualified ruler? Artorias. You don't understand the human heart. The soft words struck like a heavy hammer, landing in the most confused inch of her heart. The human heart. She doesn't understand the human heart? A judgment akin to a heart-wrenching critique. The girl stared blankly at her own palm. Rumors of the people, the Lord's harsh rule, the marauding bandits. Despite being a good person, she couldn't receive good in return. These undeniable facts were right in front of her. Ideas are more powerful than a sword. During this time, Alvin had taught her many concepts she had never heard of in her life. About exploitation, about productivity, about surplus value, about the nature of noble aristocracy. These words sounded obscure at first, but after explanations, their clear and distinct meanings seemed to penetrate the laws governing the world. And what the magus of flowers in her dreams had been teaching her all along were often just empty words. To become a king, to wield a sword, to adhere to the knight's spirit, to learn, to be ruthless. Why should one be ruthless? Because with ruthlessness, you won't suffer. Why would becoming a king cause suffering? Leading the people forward isn't a noble act. When she asked herself such questions, the magus of flowers just sighed and couldn't answer her questions. But when it came to Alvin, he patiently explained everything, whether it was facts or logic, everything was so clear. So, the education she had received over the years about being a king. Could it be wrong? Not understanding the human heart. Just a few simple words. Finally, the girl began to have an indelible doubt and questioning of the worldview she had always adhered to. And at this moment, you want to become a king, right? A clear voice echoed in front of her. The girl raised her eyes in surprise, looking at the silver-haired youth in front of her. However, the youth didn't look at her, instead, he gazed into the distant horizon. Sir, how did you know? As soon as Merlin's prophecy came out, which knight on this island wouldn't want to become the king of Britannia? It's an open secret. Alvin spoke slowly, his words sounding gentle and ethereal. Do you remember when you asked me why I treated you with such extraordinary patience? You said. I look a lot like someone you knew. That's right, so you see, I also formed this friendship with you out of selfishness. My old friend once suffered a miserable betrayal, and I don't want you to follow the same path. To become a king, do you know what you lack the most? As his words fell silent, in the girl's dim and obscure vision, it seemed like a beam of light suddenly projected. Alvin's words seemed to carry a kind of magic, like a life-saving straw, making people unconsciously want to grasp that dazzling light. She suddenly lifted her head. Please guide me, Sir Alvin. What should I do? In that case. Alvin smiled. The curvature of his mouth, so delightfully pleasing, seemed like a deep and endless rift that cracked open in front of the girl. Try being a bit more selfish first, how about that? Selfish. Lower virtue from those elusive clouds, think about problems from a human perspective, politely refuse things you don't like, express your desires confidently when you want to try something, practice your own selfishness, only then can you understand the emotions of being human. No one is born with a specific purpose, no one is born to become a king, Artorias. In other words, to pull her down from the divine seat formed by the multitude. Escape from such a tragic fate. As an innocent being, there's no need to bear such responsibilities. Embracing these thoughts that would lead her to evil. Under the bright sunlight, the silver-haired youth smiled at the girl word by word. Before becoming a king, first become a human. Chapter 27, 27 I don't want to learn any more, Merlin. Shedding the old and embracing the new, the courtyard witnessed the arrival of spring without a single fallen leaf to sweep. In the evening glow, an elderly knight sat in the backyard, pouring a cup of homemade fruit wine for the silver-haired magus in front of him. Magus, you've always been busy with affairs. Why did you personally come to visit today? Remarked the elderly knight, Hector. Traveling in this direction, I took the opportunity to visit Lily. Replied the gentleman with a smile, a man known as Merlin, the magus of flowers. His waist-length silver hair seemed to shimmer with a rainbow-like brilliance in the sunlight, complemented by an elegant robe that exuded an aristocratic air. With a face carved like a work of art, adorned with enchanting amethyst eyes, the combination presented a beauty seemingly beyond the realm of humanity. In truth, he was not human but a half-incubus, possessing world-defying beauty. This man, with his unparalleled beauty, was Merlin, the renowned magus of Britannia. Facing Sir Ector, Merlin's words sounded gentle and sincere, but they concealed a hidden truth. In reality, he was just getting tired of the Northlands and decided to visit this area while seeking flowers and gossip. Merlin, the great sage, with his extraordinary magical prowess, was a well-known figure throughout Britannia. However, what people didn't know was that he couldn't survive without women. With his charming demeanor and the allure of incubus, he could captivate the hearts and minds of almost any woman with just a glance. If he grew weary, wiping away those picturesque memories, he could move on like a traceless dream. In other words, he was Britannia's greatest scoundrel and the master of time management. Originally, he was busy in the Orkney Isles, engaging in profound conversations with the Duchess. However, recently, Merlin's right eyelid kept twitching incessantly, as if indicating some uneasy omen. Yet, despite using his miraculous clairvoyance to observe the present world multiple times, he couldn't discern any clues. Using this miracle-like clairvoyance was quite draining. He might as well snuggle up in a woman's embrace. After a few tries, Merlin became lazy about looking behind him. However, the ominous foreboding seemed to linger around his mind, refusing to dissipate. As an incubus, there was hardly anything in Britannia that could threaten his life. So, was the problem really with Lily? Communication of consciousness wasn't as restricted as the limitations of the physical body. Leveraging dreams, Merlin could easily communicate with people even from afar. So, during the day, he would lie on a woman's bed, giving profound advice, and at night, he would find time to teach Lily various aspects of kingship through dreams. It must be said that his time management was impeccable. During these days, Lily remained diligent and eager to learn, showing no signs of peculiar behavior. At most, it seemed like she had more questions, which was normal for a young girl. But Merlin couldn't shake the feeling that he should visit her in person. Sipping the fruit wine, he became somewhat intoxicated by its exceptionally crisp and sweet taste. The magus let out a contented sigh. Ah, very refreshing. Your brewing skills are becoming more refined. Spring, indeed, was suitable for drinking. Sir Ector, how has Lily been lately? Her Excellency Artoria. She's growing well, always feeling the presence of the king. She will undoubtedly become an outstanding ruler in the future. Although I say that. Despite his words, there was no joy on the old knight's face. Instead, it displayed a kind of compassion, weariness, and a complex expression. She has recently made friends. To be honest, as an old man, there's not much in swordsmanship that I can teach Her Excellency Artoria anymore. Her combat skill have progressed by leaps and bounds, thanks in large part to the patient training provided by Sir Alvin. Alvin. Hearing a novel name, Merlin couldn't help but show a keen interest. Lily has made friends, and she didn't inform me, her teacher. What kind of person is he? She didn't inform you. Well, maybe it's just a shy gesture from a young girl. Sir Ector gazed at the ripples in his wine cup. As for what kind of person, Sir Alvin is undoubtedly a very outstanding young man. With his talents and promising future, looking at him can't help but remind people of. As he spoke, Sir Ector's voice paused slightly. Reminds people of the past me. Oh? Your praise is unexpectedly high. Even the technique of brewing this wine is not my creation, it's a craft bestowed upon my son Kay by Sir Alvin. Even Sir Ector says so. It seems he's truly remarkable. I must meet him if the opportunity arises. Merlin silently noted down the name Alvin. But he didn't pay too much attention to it. The so-called outstanding knight, having served 2 reigns, he had seen countless of them. Stripping away the glamorous armor, it was difficult to say what remained inside. Perhaps another descendant of some noble family? Although this person's combat skills were indeed exceptional in sparring with Lily, the growth potential of a dragon kind was something beyond human comparison. By the way, Magus, Sir Alvin. As if suddenly troubled by something. Sir Ector wore a troubled expression. Her Excellency Artoria, her appetite has been growing, and the girl's figure is developing rapidly. I want to ask, does she intend to keep dressing as a boy forever? The truth will inevitably be revealed sooner or later. No, it's perfectly fine to switch back to her female form normally. Merlin smiled, dressing as a boy is just a temporary measure. Do you mean? After the king's selection ceremony, I plan to travel with her in the counties. Switching back to her female form at that time will have a great effect in concealing her identity. Speaking of this, Merlin couldn't help but start to boast. The red dragon was born a girl. When I discovered this result, both Uther and I were quite distressed. After all, inherent biases persist, becoming the king of this country won't gain recognition if you are not male. So, I came up with an idea on the spot, exerting great effort to create a two-layer concept confusing illusion for her. I'm not bragging, its power is even enough to deceive the world. The first layer is, when she appears as Artoria, no one will see her as a man. The second layer is, when she appears as Artorias, no one will see her as a woman. Even if one understands one layer, they will be lost in this nested logic. Without magical perception comparable to that of a dragon, there is no possibility of unraveling it. Upon hearing this, Sir Ector's expression slightly stiffened for a moment. But considering that the Magus had come this far, he must have a method of judgment. The truth would soon become apparent, wouldn't it? Embracing a mindset of both anticipating the truth and fearing the outcome, the old knight's emotions were unexpectedly uneasy. If, indeed, she was the heir of that highness. Then Lily. It seems Lily is about to return. The white-haired Magus stood up with a smile, his gaze seemingly penetrating the gate, staring into the wilderness beyond the courtyard. In the evening, the lingering twilight between the clouds, the rippling sunset accompanying the continuous mountains, in the transparent purple eyes of the incubus, it seemed to reflect the magnificent crimson of the entire island. The golden-haired girl, amidst the blending of the setting sun and the autumn water, joyfully ran back. Merlin closed his eyes. As her teacher, he had to maintain an air of mystery. Now was not the time for a meeting. Thanks for the hospitality, Sir Ector. I might come to drink this wine often lately. The grass underfoot was surrounded by dazzling flowers. The Magus's figure dispersed like dancing petals in the wind. Following that, outside the door, the cheerful voice of the girl's return rang out, brimming with vitality as usual. Father, I'm hungry. Today, let's study governance, Lily, specifically the chapter on consolidating taxation. This is a crucial topic for becoming a good ruler. In the courtyard adorned with colorful flowers, the Magus of Flowers and the young girl sat facing each other. The white-haired man seemed to be smiling, his face like a dream, blurry and indistinct no matter how the girl observed him. However, much to her regret, despite being a complete joker, Merlin wasn't one to forget his duty. This dreamlike effect was because this place was not reality, it was a dream constructed by the incubus. Every night, the great sage Merlin would teach the girl with the blood of the red dragon in her veins in her dreams, imparting knowledge about how to be a ruler. But today, after Merlin opened the book, the golden-haired girl didn't follow the usual routine of flipping through the pages. Instead, she sat upright with a serious and solemn expression on her face. What's wrong, Lily? Are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere? Merlin asked with a smile, his gentle voice like a refreshing breeze. However, the answer he received caused his smile to freeze on his face. I want to take a break, Merlin. Lily, what are you saying? Merlin, a person's energy has its limits. The girl spoke each word. In this long learning journey, I've gradually understood a fact, that is, the more you try to master something with all your might, the harder it becomes to achieve the goal. So, to become a ruler, you must surpass your originally narrow perspective. Lily, what exactly do you want to say? Which means? The girl declared loudly and confidently. I don't want to study today, Merlin. Why? The half-incubus was a bit flustered, scratching his head. Slacking off is not a virtue of a ruler. I have never experienced what it's like to have a good night's sleep, so I'm curious. The girl declared loudly, saying something that sounded absurd. However, it was indeed the truth. Almost all of her energy was spent on training and swordsmanship every day. Moreover, because she was worried about Ector's tired back, she voluntarily took on the labor of farming and feeding horses in her free time. The girl's daily sleep time hardly exceeded 3 hours. However, even in this meager time, she still had to receive Merlin's lessons about being a ruler even in her dreams. Even her foster brother Kay, at present, was unaware of this secret. If he found out, he would surely want to drag that white-haired Merlin out of her dreams and give him a good beating. Damn it, just be a person. From as far back as she could remember, the girl had never truly entered the realm of dreams. To the point where she had almost forgotten what sleep was like. I want to experience what it feels like to sleep. This perfectly reasonable request plunged the magus into speechless silence. The half-incubus's heart didn't comprehend what guilt meant. However, for some reason, a sense of unease welled up within him, a feeling that he had done something wrong. So, let's rest today, Lily. Under the drive of this unease, Merlin chose to agree to her request. Immediately, the girl's words of gratitude plunged the magus into even deeper contemplation. Thank you. Thinking like this, the girl's face brightened with a radiant smile. Teaching me about ruling every day, Merlin, you work so hard. Please remember to take a break too. To become a ruler, I should strive for an all-around development in virtue, intelligence, physical fitness, beauty, and labor. Like, taking a break every 5 days for 2 days. It's said that combining work and rest like this can lead to a better state. What are you saying? A sense of discord. Merlin felt a strong sense of discord. The girl's words were simply too unexpected. Although it was reasonable to want to take a break, combining work and rest, virtue, intelligence, physical fitness, beauty. This was definitely not the Artoria with a strong sense of mission she used to be. She would never question herself like this in the past. Interesting, who taught you such things, Lily? Could it be that? In the magus's mind, a name flickered faintly. Alvin. Ah, so you've already met Sir Alvin? The girl exclaimed softly and then looked somewhat embarrassed. Yes, that's right. Teacher Merlin, I think what Sir Alvin said makes a lot of sense. As soon as this topic came up, her voice became even more lively. Merlin's expression, in turn, became more solemn. Shyness, a rosy flush, admiration, and the brilliance that shimmered in her eyes. Merlin was very familiar with such expressions. The women in the city would look at him with the same expression. Ah, his adorable Lily, has she really fallen in love? This could be troublesome. Lily, rest well tonight. I wish you sweet dreams. With a gentle wave of Merlin's hand, brilliant petals fluttered in the air. The golden-haired girl, sleeping in the stable, fell into a deep slumber in an instant. Merlin's figure appeared by her side, gently laying a grass mat for her. Quietly pushing open the door, he stepped out of the courtyard. Merlin lifted his head, contemplating the starry night sky as if lost in thought. Alvin, The half-incubus smiled gently. The subtle curvature of his lips seemed quite meaningful. You little thief! Chapter 28, 28U, White-haired one. As you sprint through the lush forest towards the direction of Londinium, you move like a silent and elusive shadow. The mere thought of the witch awaiting your return for nurturing at home has already transported your heart into the depths of that castle. With the imminent departure from this wooded realm, suddenly, you catch a whiff of a rich fragrance. Is it the scent of flowers? Realizing this, you abruptly halt your steps, gazing ahead with a solemn expression. Hello, Alvin. Moonlight gently caresses, and shadows sway amid the trees. In this deep forest, a tender male voice suddenly echoes. Along with it, crimson petals unpredictably shower down. A man adorned in a silver robe slowly emerges from the midst of the falling flowers. Bathed in the radiant moonlight, his white hair seems to exhibit a dazzling array of colors. Court Magus Merlin. As the prompt on the system appears, Alvin, who had already heard Morgan's description, immediately recognizes this contemptible figure from Britain. The palms of the young man's hands quietly press onto the hilt of his sword. Finally found out, hey? Or rather, spending several months by Artorias' side, Alvin is surprised it took Merlin this long. Finally, Merlin has found him. Yet, he doesn't believe this magus is here just to discuss educational policies. Oh dear, since you know me, that makes things easier. I was worried about how to introduce myself. You can call me Merlin. A face adorned with a gentle smile. The magus looks at the silver-haired youth in front of him with a serious expression. In those purplish eyes, a subtle mist begins to diffuse silently. Then, an expression of extreme surprise appears on Merlin's face. Why? Oh, my clairvoyance couldn't detect your presence. Interesting. Fascinating. Let me think. So, Alvin. You are someone who shouldn't exist in this world. Uttering such inexplicable words, Merlin's voice gradually becomes louder and more excited. Ah! No wonder. The occasional heart palpitations and premonitions I felt. They actually signified this. Variables. Like a butterfly flapping its wings, the tiny disturbances eventually stir up a massive storm. Everything in this world has been swept away by this variable. Unreliable observations, inaccurate predictions, the course of fate has become chaotic. Ah, this unpredictability in the future is marvelous. Simply too wonderful. Interesting. How interesting. Rather than that, Alvin, your appearance is simply too intriguing. Like a mischievous child opening a door and suddenly discovering an abundance of exquisite anime figures filling the room. Merlin, who lives by the creed of finding amusement, experiences a rare sense of delight. These eyes, capable of witnessing everything in this world, a miraculous clairvoyance he possesses since birth. Because as long as he wishes, he can see everything. Therefore, this island, a remnant of the age of gods, often leaves Merlin feeling bored. Playing with women is just a pastime. It's just to satisfy a carnal desire. However, at this moment, this clairvoyance is utterly unable to detect the figure of the youth in front of him. At this face-to-face distance, it was impossible for this person to hide his presence, especially in front of his clairvoyance who could see everything that happened in his time. Something like that could only possibly happen as this man was the king assassin. But obviously this person is not that old man. So, the answer is only one. The person in front of him does not belong to this world. Not belonging to this world means that the clairvoyance, which observes everything in this world, naturally cannot perceive his presence. Spiritron transference? Or is it that true magic capable of traversing time and space? What is your identity? What methods have you used to arrive in this era? One question after another is thrown out. The magus walks around in excitement, his thrilled expression now plainly visible. Unfortunately, such enthusiasm only receives a cold response from the young man. None of your damn business. Of course, Alvin would not reply. Through these fragmentary words, he has already understood what the other party is going on about. Is this clairvoyance just some common thing? Merlin unexpectedly has a similar type of talent. However, his eyes cannot see him. Although he doesn't know the specific reason, based on such details, this magus of flowers immediately discerns his identity. This guy is even more tricky than imagined. If you can call out my name, it means you already know. You didn't come here just to blabber, did you, Merlin? Tisk, don't be so distant, Alvin. The magus smiles and walks towards this side. Immediately, his steps come to a perfect halt just outside the young man's shadow. Seeing this scene, Alvin's pupils involuntarily contract. If the other person takes one step forward, his shadow sword will unleash slashes. However, even such imperceptible magical energy fluctuations are detected by Merlin. Indeed, it is true. Examining Alvin from head to toe, and those exaggerated magic circuits. In front of this grand magus, the immature ultimate life form, there are no secrets to be had. Tisk, this exaggerated physique, this attribute magical power, and this intoxicating appearance. Merlin gazes up and down at the young man in front of him, immediately grasping the truth. He says with a smile, so, you're actually the child of Vortigern. As the words fade away, Alvin slightly squints his eyes. The magus continues talking to himself. Vortigern doesn't have any magical talent, and no woman can withstand his dragon's blood. Understand, this is Morgan's doing, right? Wow! The more I look, the more pleasantly surprised I become. What an astonishing masterpiece! Your performance is even on par with Lily's. No, it might even surpass hers. Looks like I've really angered the witch. Facing this creation called the ultimate life form, Merlin lets out a sincere admiration, and the smile on his face is consistently refreshing. However, Alvin feels no emotion within that smile. It contains no feelings but rather seems like a mask, because people like smiles, so it's something fabricated and pieced together. Filled with a strong, non-human sense of dissonance. Morgan was right. This guy is not human at all. The moonlight is lonely, and the shadows of the trees sway. At this moment, even though almost all secrets have been exposed, Alvin's emotions show no signs of panic. Slashing the flesh, severing the soul, he, who has trained his insight, will pursue that glimmer of hope even in the most dangerous situations. In moments that become even more perilous, his heart becomes even more calm. The lurking, unrevealed shadows become more silent and sharper. You've seen through everything, so are you satisfied now? No panic even when all secrets are exposed. The tone of the silver-haired youth is indifferent and unwavering. If you're satisfied, can you scram? You white-haired. He calls the Magus white-haired upon their first meeting. However, the guy called white-haired continues to wear a gentle and warm smile. Ah, even the way you address me is so harmonious, Alvin. Chapter 29, 29 Screw your fate. Facing the legendary Magus of Flowers, a sage revered by everyone in Britannia, Reinhard, now named Alvin, had no flattering thoughts. Instead, his attitude appeared unusually indifferent. After all, his time with Artoria had made Alvin acutely aware of the girl's tumultuous background. The twisted moral perspective was undoubtedly the result of someone's misguided teachings. Therefore, Alvin harbored no goodwill towards Merlin, the half-incubus. Uther and Merlin were indeed two precious individuals. Alvin felt that they bore a significant responsibility for Artoria's warped personality. Things that were not human were playing with human emotions. Such actions were nauseating. Oh dear, are you angry? Don't be mad, Alvin. I won't ask. The Magus chuckled with narrowed eyes. After all, during this time, my lovely Lily has been under your care. You haven't harmed her, so naturally, I have no reason to harm you either. With these words, the Magus then put on an expression that seemed like a regretful sigh. But, as Lily's teacher, I can't let you continue staying by her side. I hope you won't be too saddened by this. I just came here to inform you of this. I see, well. Hearing this, Alvin couldn't help but smile. The curve at the corner of his mouth was filled with sarcasm, and his ash-grey eyes were brimming with mockery. So, you can be afraid too, Merlin. I thought Incubus's heart didn't understand what fear meant. Oh. Merlin tilted his head, intrigued, and asked, I didn't even realize it myself. So, tell me, Alvin, what am I afraid of? You're afraid that I'll continue to let Artoria learn more truths, see through your hypocritical rhetoric, and further question the necessity of becoming a king. Alvin sneered. After all, this thing called king originally has no meaningful existence. It's just a lie fabricated by people hoping someone would step up to shoulder everything. Tisk, that's not how you should put it. Merlin shook his head disapprovingly. Becoming a king and then saving Britannia is Lily's destined fate. The casually spoken words faded away. As if the wind also subsided along with them. Looking at Merlin's smiling face, Alvin remained silent for a long time before repeating those two words, somewhat incredulous, skeptical, and softly spoken. Fate? In your eyes, Merlin. This is fate. Before encountering Merlin, the former Alvin believed that perhaps the limitations of the times led to Artoria's tragedy. The narrow perspective of the heroic view only focused on the outcome of winning or losing. After all, it was the Middle Ages, so even the great sage Merlin might not understand that a suitable political system and doctrine were the true essentials for leading people forward. Wanting to obtain an ideal king. In the eyes of the people of this era, it was only natural. However, at this moment, knowing that Merlin, like himself, possessed the miraculous clairvoyance, the half-incubus uttered this word. Finally, Alvin felt the long-lost anger. Fate. Only you, Merlin. Only you, the one Artoria trusts the most, is the least qualified to utter these two words. Hey. You can see it, right, Merlin? Staring at this figure, the great Magus of Britannia, known as the Sage. Alvin spoke word by word, his voice low. Looking at the silver-haired young man with an expression as calm as in deep of ocean's well but with flames surging beneath the ice surface. Merlin's gaze gradually became solemn. The Magus seemed to sense something he couldn't comprehend, slowly emanating from the young man's body. To be crowned as a king. To be betrayed and die. To spend a lifetime chasing elusive hopes, attempting to save this dying kingdom. But never receiving any understanding or redemption throughout her life. The only thing left with her until death was endless loneliness. Hey, did you see that, Merlin? As her teacher, possessing clairvoyance, you must have seen it long ago. Saw her, persisting even when faced with everyone's misunderstanding, everyone's hostility and prejudice. Not understood by friends, and not loved by the people. Even so, Artoria, she still persevered. Did you see it? She still persevered. And you dare to call this fate? Unable to restrain the suppressed anger in his chest any longer, Alvin suddenly roared. The hidden gaps in the dense forest seemed to sway with the young man's loud voice. Screw your fate. Sacrificing everything for a girl to save a country, are you worthy to be her teacher? However, until the roar subsided, the lingering echoes faded away. Alvin kept staring at the expression on the sage's face. However, he was disappointed. Faced with such questioning, faced with this torrent of inquiries, Merlin's expression did not change at all. Because he was not human. Merlin liked women only because, in his eyes, women were beautiful and lovely things. Like collecting insect specimens, he appreciated the beauty of humans while feeding on interesting nightmares and dreams. As an incubus, Merlin hoped that humanity could achieve a happy ending, but he did not love humans in reality. To achieve the so-called happy ending, he had consumed countless lives like insects until now, with no sense of good or evil, let alone any consciousness of guilt. Uther was once the king he supported and lifted to power on a whim. Just wanting to help humanity, he started cultivating a new vessel named Artoria, the so-called king. In the end, Merlin believed that he had no responsibility for how this country would turn out and did not feel any guilt. He just thought, it was interesting. Interesting things should bring joy, right? So, as an incubus, he couldn't understand Alvin's anger. This is Lily's own choice. The Magus just continued to smile as usual and softly said, I'm just guiding her in the right direction. Anyone can say that, but only you don't deserve it. You're not human. Never before had there been such anger. Never before had there been such a desire to crush someone into dust. Symbolizing tyranny, the crimson color slowly spread in the iron-grey lake. The existence called the ultimate life form, for the first time in this life, exerted its full power. The heartbeat thumped with a loud drumming sound. With the violent release of violence contained within this body, rising and soaring wildly, 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000. In this most exciting drumbeat, Alvin's hand gently gripped his sword. In an instant, silence fell over the earth. As if instinctively sensing something, the birds suddenly let out a mournful cry, and the creatures within 1,000 yards began to panic, scattering and fleeing from this place. The silent darkness gathered, swallowing even the moonlight. Thick shadows almost solidified around the silver-haired youth, flowing slowly like mercury. The thin and almost invisible dark sword light spread inch by inch on the edge of Alvin's blade. With his icy and penetrating voice, it slowly rippled through this deep forest. Artoria, I'm going to see her. If you want to stop me, you can die. Chapter 30, Merlin. Although his demeanor may appear gentle and amiable, Merlin will not let you leave peacefully. A confrontation with him is inevitable. The opponent is a half-incubus, a sage, a great magus, and every title since birth echoes gloriously in Britannia. He is Merlin. But, so what? You are, the ultimate life form. Beneath this vast moonlight, it is your absolute home ground. He wears human skin but is something inhuman, you possess a dragon's body yet harbor a clear human heart. In this most dangerous pass, your heart, on the contrary, becomes extremely relaxed. Where there is light, there is also accompanying shadow. If that light represents the thriving vitality of all things, then the shadow represents death. The shadows accompanying the night are quiet, extinguished, and murderous. You, manipulating the shadows, attempt to gift the other a present named death, an eternal tranquility. In the ethereal thoughts, your murderous intent gradually quiets, your nature gradually converges. You feel as if your body is constantly sinking, and in a trance. You seem to reach a certain extreme of dormancy. If there is light, it will be swallowed by that light. If there is no shadow, you yourself are the embodiment of shadow. You don't like to argue about victory or defeat, nor do you get entangled in the troubles of conflict, but you also cannot allow anyone to disrupt this peaceful life. The excess magical power absorbed during this period, combined with your enlightenment, has further pushed you beyond your limits and skills. Mana burst, shadow, mana burst, light devour. Mana burst, light devour A+. As the name implies, it is the ability to devour light. Vortigern is called the demonic dragon that devours light, and as one with the bloodline of a vile king, you inherit his shadow attribute. Understanding the unity of light and shadow, you can now take away the ubiquitous light on this vast land and convert it into your own magical power. With the blessing of the night, even the radiance emitted by noble phantasms can be easily devoured by you. Perhaps, only those legendary artifacts won't have their brilliant light consumed by you. With the light-devouring property, your magical power will be the pervasive, extremely dark fluctuation that corrodes everything. Hugh. Ha. Inhale deeply, then exhale slowly. Alvin adjusted his breathing, and with the chilling cold spreading in the air, the light around him seemed to distort slightly. His 5 fingers pressed down, slowly gripping the sword hilt. Click. From extreme motion to extreme stillness, in this fleeting moment, all the concentrated power poured out, erupted. Buzz. In Merlin's eyes, the young man slowly swung the sword. It was not the sharp slashing he imagined, nor the swift agility pushed to the extreme. He swung the sword as if really depicting with meticulous brush strokes. Slow, too slow. It couldn't even be called a slash at all. However, it was precisely this slow, almost stagnant movement that made the heart of the Magus suddenly surge. No, it's just an illusion. Interesting. Rather, it's fascinating, truly fascinating. This guy, Alvin, actually cast an illusion on him, a master of the illusion. In an instant, Merlin comprehended the method Alvin used to release the illusion. This spell did not affect himself but influenced everything visible to the outside world, making it impossible to counter. Light is the essence of color. Thanks to his previous experience with AI magecraft, Alvin had already reached the pinnacle in manipulating light and shadow. Under his meticulous control, this ultimate life form not only absorbed the light but also completely covered the incubus's vision with flowing shadows. The invisible blade is the deadliest. What the Magus witnessed at this moment was no longer real. It was an illusion created by Alvin, a mirage. Before realizing it, the attack had already hit. Come, enumerate your sins, Merlin. This momentary beautiful thing is the funeral bloom for you. In the silent obliteration, hundreds and thousands of dark sword lights symbolizing death suddenly burst forth, like a beautiful rose quietly blooming in the twilight. In an instant, it shattered Merlin's figure in the center into a cluster of scattered petal fragments. Alvin silently watched the petals cut into pieces and falling to the ground, withering in an instant. Merlin, the half-incubus, had disappeared without a trace. Did he escape? Even though he had captured him in the spell in an instant and confirmed that it was his true body, this all-encompassing attack was actually dodged. Morgan was right. This guy is really slippery. Well, if he escaped, so be it. Alvin turned around, preparing to go to Sir Ector's house, to see Artoria, perhaps for the last time. Then, he saw Merlin's face, which was smiling disgustingly like a ghost, right in front of him. The silver-haired young man squinted his eyes slightly. Ah, dear me, what a terrifying move, Alvin. The power of the attack you just unleashed has even reached the level of a noble phantasm. Pfft! A dark sword light suddenly shot out from between the leaves, unexpectedly piercing through the Magus's throat without warning. However, what flowed out of the fatal wound, which would be considered lethal for ordinary people, was not blood, but colorful and dazzling flower petals. How is it? Do you like it? Unfortunately, you can't kill me yet, Alvin. Humming an elegant and soothing tune, he casually sprinkled the bloody flowers that flowed from him towards the silver-haired young man, and the half-incubus seemed to be having a very happy time. Have you had enough? Not even the need to wave his movements. Alvin flicked his finger, and thousands of sword lights burst out again, piercing Merlin's figure. But petals. Petals. Still petals. Colorful and disorderly, the petals fell from the dense forest, creating a gorgeous scene under the cold moonlight. However, no matter who was watching, Alvin felt nauseous. Nauseous, thoroughly nauseous. He had never seen such a sticky guy in his life. Merlin, do you love flowers so much with your white hair? Well, there's nothing I can do after all, I am the mage of flowers. The interwoven and gentle voice echoed from all directions. From some unknown point in time, this forest was already filled with countless Merlins. Tearing him apart would summon another. Even if cut in half or beheaded, 2 new Merlins would grow under the clustering petals. The shadows surged like tides. Alvin held onto the sword hilt, breathing slightly heavier. The magical power of the ultimate life form could be described as vast and deep, but it wasn't something to be wasted. Yes, he had fallen into the illusion. When? From which step? Impossible to know. It might be possible that since the first time he saw this guy, he was already deeply entangled. Tricky indeed, the incubus's illusions were truly well-deserved. However, it didn't matter anymore. Because he also stood invincible. Just an illusion, it's meaningless if you can't kill me, Merlin. Alvin turned his head without hesitation. In just a few breaths, the young man's figure dissolved into the shadows of the deep forest. Can't win, then escape. No need to entangle with this idiot. This is my escape route, Merlin. Kill you? Indeed, I can't kill you. Watching the silver-haired youth leaving, Merlin smiled gently, as if completely unconcerned with Alvin's tactical shift. But, you are quite ruthless in your actions, Alvin. Saying so, a deep wound slowly cracked open on the cheeks of all the Merlins, oozing dark purple blood. This caused the incubus's smile to lose its usual gentle demeanor and take on a somewhat sinister meaning. It wasn't as carefree and easygoing as it seemed on the surface. He was injured. How long had it been since he last bled? Merlin had already almost forgotten those distant days. Interesting, you're really interesting, Alvin. You're the most interesting person I've ever met. But unfortunately, you're right, I really can't let Lily continue to be in contact with you. This is also, for the sake of humanity's future. And, yes, I won't use any violence, that's too crude. But it's okay. As long as I can stop you. With muttered soliloquies, all the Merlins raised their wands. To show his respect, he decided to exert his full strength. This was the first time he cast this spell on a person. The name of the noble phantasm engraved in Merlin's fate had long been known to him. Although the time was not ripe yet, and the full power had not been unleashed. However, dealing with the immature son of the White Dragon was more than enough. All the Merlins chanted softly. From the inner sea of the planet, from the Tower of Insight. From the four corners of paradise, let them know. Their story is filled with blessings. Only those free of sin may pass. Garden of Avalon. With the Merlins rising and falling chants, crimson petals fell from the sky. In an instant, the world seemed to become completely different, yet at the same time, nothing had changed. Goodbye, Alvin. The Magus smiled and his figure quietly dispersed in the wind-blown flowers. The night dyed the moon, the beauty slowly groomed. Between the vermilion lips, a faint and gentle smile appeared. Morgan lazily lay on her side in front of the full-length mirror in the bedroom, examining her reflection. The toes, as moist as gem, slightly flexed in the black fabric. Above the witch's long and well-proportioned legs, the black stockings shone with a tempting luster. She even deliberately chose a pair of fluorescent high heels, gently swaying on the tips of her feet. The delicate high heels, adorned with a faint glow, twinkled like stars. The round and moist toes, wrapped in black fabric, lifted slightly, and the witch blushed, extending her arm to teasingly take off the shoes. This attire, it's really embarrassing. But, Alvin seems to really like this style. Surprised by her disciple's outstanding creativity in clothing and attire, all these exquisite dresses were gifts personally woven and tailored by Alvin during these days. Their sizes naturally went through meticulous measurements by the hands of the young man, ensuring that every piece of fabric fit snugly. Thinking about how tonight would be another passionate and thrilling battle. A faint rosy hue appeared on Morgan's cheeks. Comparing her slender and well-proportioned body curves, the sapphire blue witch, full of anticipation, boldly selected various styles of daring lingerie from the wardrobe. But, without any warning, as if in a trance, a premonition seemed to emerge. The thin fabric, as if non-existent, quietly slipped from Morgan's hands. Alvin's presence disappeared. Morgan abruptly turned her head, looking towards the distant horizon under the night curtain. The bright candle light in the room flickered and suddenly extinguished. The surrounding shadows silently flowed and gathered, inch by inch climbing onto her body, solidifying into substance. The witch was once again covered in that black veil that repelled people 1,000 miles away. Behind the curtain, the witch's voice, as deep as the eternal night, echoed bone-chillingly, desolate and silent. If there's any mishap with Alvin, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth, tearing your body into pieces. Merlin. Chapter 31, 31 He is the son of the White Dragon, Vortigern. Running. A seemingly endless run. Utilizing your full strength, you swiftly navigate through the deep forest, sprinting towards the direction of Artorias' house like a wisp of shadow. Profound and flowing shadows cover your entire body, annihilating the air resistance, while your breath, like a winter cicada, remains restrained and dormant. You realize that, at this moment, Merlin can't kill you, but likewise, you can't kill him either, and that's enough. Under the influence of the light devour skill, you silently devour all the light reflected on you like a black hole. In this concealed state, even Merlin won't detect your presence. In this rapid movement, time seems to stretch. Everything around you blurs in your field of vision. The sounds you can hear gradually fade, as if even the sound of the wind dissipates. Silence. So quiet. No sound can be heard at all. However, busy with your journey, you don't notice this excessively eerie anomaly. In this excessively quiet environment, you, rushing at full speed, cover dozens of miles in just a few minutes. You burst out of the forest, and the ultimate life form's eyesight allows you to see the familiar courtyard from a considerable distance. You come to a halt. Moonlight, pure and bright, gently touches the green grass. In the silent courtyard, not a trace of light can be seen. Dew is white tonight, the moonlight is bright in the homeland. Staring at the moon wheel, as pure as your home used to be, a hint of melancholy surges in your heart. Even though it is a simulation in name, you have long treated all of this as real. Even if you eventually discover that everything is just a dream, your experiences, emotions, and this human heart of yours are all undeniably real. Real and not illusory. This simulator, it's been a while since it said something understandable. Alvin walked under the moonlight. From when did it seem like he had truly become friends with Artoria? Although the initial intention was to lead her to a fall. Perhaps cultivating the protagonist with antagonistic traits was an essential characteristic, something he had to taste. On this late night, Alvin pondered, Artoria should be enjoying sweet dreams. After all, during these days, he had not skimped on feeding her. However, feeding the witch was a concept entirely different. Unfortunately, the tranquil life had come to an end. Artoria. Although it was inconvenient to disturb her peaceful slumber, Alvin believed it was necessary to bid a solemn farewell. Pushing open the wooden gate, bathed in moonlight, the young man entered the already familiar courtyard, standing quietly in place. At such close proximity, even in her sleep, Artoria presumably could detect his presence. However, there was no sound. Alvin finally noticed that the environment was excessively silent. As the ultimate life form, he surprisingly couldn't hear the person inside, the subtle sounds of breathing. If it were merely going out, that would be fine, but in reality, it became excessively quiet. It seemed that even the sounds of insects rustling, birds chirping, and the environmental sounds of beasts stepping on the soil were no longer present. Quiet. Silent. As if all the sounds were being pushed away by the world. Alvin looked back. From the direction he came running from, colorful flowers bloomed all the way. And the courtyard gate that had been pushed open seemed to have silently closed again. He lowered his eyelids, gazing at his palms. Under the moonlight, the originally fair skin exhibited a translucent texture, and the gaze could penetrate the arm, observing the ground covered with flowers. As if his existence was being erased from this world. His pupils slightly trembled. Alvin reached out, gently pushing open the stable door. No. Actually, the door wasn't pushed open. Accompanied by blooming flowers underfoot, he simply, like a ghost, walked in. Alvin silently observed the scene inside the house. He opened his mouth but found that he couldn't make a sound. The golden-haired girl was lying on the hay, sleeping soundly, her breathing peaceful and steady. Actually sleeping in the stable. In other words, she was still taking care of the horses until bedtime? Ah, just that tired, she fell asleep like that, Artoria. Although she was covered only with a thin blanket, and beneath her was a rough grass mat, it was evident that the girl was sleeping soundly. A faint and happy smile adorned her face, and her delicate features still looked flawless even with the added touch of wheat spikes. Ven. Hee hee. From her lip movements, it could be seen that she seemed to be murmuring a sweet dream. Alvin felt a slight touch in his heart. He bent down, subconsciously wanting to tuck the blanket in tighter for her. And then, the young man's hand just passed through, the fingertips stagnated in the air. Unable to hear any sound. Even more unable to interact with reality. Only the splendid flowers followed, blooming all the way, isolating the entire world. This could be called a miraculous illusion. The young man lifted his gaze, eyes penetrating the eaves, looking straight at the bright moon hanging high in the sky. The moon, also looking at the youth from high above. Can only observe, but cannot touch. As if locked in a lonely tower. Despite the close distance, it felt like an insurmountable chasm. He was thus isolated in this secluded utopia, Garden of Avalon. Sir! Alvin! Her eyelids felt the faint morning light pouring in through the door gap. She continued to murmur, uttering the name from her dream. Rubbing her sleepy eyes, the girl propped herself up with straw and slowly woke up. Dim light, the breath of horses, and the scent of grass lingered around her. There was also a blanket covering her to prevent her from getting cold. This scene made her quickly realize that she had slept in the stable last night. "Ah, you're awake, Lily?" As she woke up, an incredibly familiar and gentle voice echoed in her ears. The girl raised her gaze, and in her pupils reflected the unfamiliar face of the white-haired magus, smiling. To say it was unfamiliar. In reality, they had already seen each other countless times in their dreams. However, seeing this face clearly for the first time was happening right now. This was not a dream. And, it turned out to be the real person. Looking at the magus in front of her, Artorias' expression froze for a moment. Merlin. Just like the face she had imagined. The gorgeous and mysterious deep purple eyes, the handsome features carved like a divine being, and the somewhat ferocious scar on the right cheek. Fresh blood rolled over, and it could be seen that it had just scabbed over. That disharmonious scar looked so abrupt. It was like a crack had appeared on an exquisite gem, completely destroying its flawless beauty, making it instantly ordinary and lacking the bewitching charm it once had. "Yes, it's me, Merlin. Lily, did you sleep well last night?" Sleeping. When this topic came up, the girl recalled the bold dream of last night. Her cheeks turned slightly red. She actually dreamed. She absent-mindedly touched her lips, and Artoria looked down with a dazed expression. The blanket, she remembered not covering herself with it last night. She even dreamed that Alvin came to cover her at night. Ah, it should be Merlin or Kay who did it, right? After all, it was just a dream. The girl sighed somewhat sadly, then suddenly remembered. Wait, Merlin seems to be asking her a question? Well, I slept very well. Still feeling the lingering embarrassment, the girl stumbled over her words. Thank you for agreeing to my presumptuous request last night. It's okay. It seems you had a dream that was intoxicating. Merlin smiled and emphasized those few words. To the blushing girl, it sounded somewhat like he was teasing her. That's right, Merlin did it on purpose. As an incubus, he had long seen the content of the dream. Just a kiss, and she's so shy. This girl are really innocent. Adult matters, she probably doesn't understand at all. Well, it's normal since no one taught her. Lily wouldn't think that just a kiss would make her pregnant, right? Cough cough. Speaking of which, why are you here, Merlin? Coughing a couple of times to cover up the embarrassment. The girl lifted the straw mat and hastily got up. And, what's this? You're injured. Just a minor injury. Merlin touched the scar on his cheek, still smiling, his tone seemingly indifferent. But even he had to admit. What a sharp sword. This sword wound was endowed with an extremely subtle, deadly concept, reaching the threshold of the assassin's extreme, making it impossible to be healed by magecraft. Really, there are too many surprises on this journey. Are you really a swordsman and not an assassin, Alvin? Even with the constitution of a incubus, Merlin would need some time to recover from this injury. Because there is a very urgent matter, Lily, so I personally came here. Let's talk about the details outside. The girl, somewhat bewildered, straightened herself up a bit and followed Merlin in pushing open the stable door. In the backyard, two people with different expressions were standing. Hector and Kay. Seeing the gaze of her sister fixed on him, the golden-haired youth sighed and silently shifted his gaze away. On the other hand, Hector wore a very complicated expression on his face, one that Artoria found hard to describe: melancholy, relieved, sorrowful, reluctant. Like a troubled old knight, he showed an expression that seemed to contain a mixture of various feelings. The magus turned around and smiled at the girl. Perhaps the news is very sudden, Lily, but we must set out on a journey immediately. Or, let's say, run away, haha. As if trying to dispel the stagnant atmosphere. The magus let out a relaxed and cheerful laugh. It's better to leave today. Kay will also join us on the road, and Hector came to bid farewell. What are you saying? Wait, Merlin, you, and Kay, father? What on earth happened? Artoria quickly associated it with the shocking possibility. Could it be that, did King Vortigern launch an attack? Kay clenched his fists, seemingly a bit impatient. Merlin, you bastard, just spit it out if you have something to say. Anyway, sooner or later, we have to tell her, right? If you don't want to say it, let me be the villain. Kay, what are you going to say? The Magus slightly crouched down. With his splendid deep purple eyes, he stared into the deep green, somewhat confused eyes of the girl. What I'm going to say next, don't be afraid, Lily. Why, afraid? The girl shook her head with effort. As someone who will become a king, even if Vortigern comes to kill me, I will never be afraid, Merlin. Then, I'll say it. The half-incubus smiled brightly. Your idol, Alvin, has the same surname as you. As the words fell, the lingering sound echoed in the wind. The girl's expression still seemed a bit dazed. But soon, she froze in place, staring blankly at the Magus in front of her. What? What is Merlin talking about? Same surname. In the moment when she realized what that word meant, it was as if something had been drawn out of her brain. She didn't want to think. And couldn't think. Dizziness. A strong sense of dizziness, almost making it difficult to stand. Her legs felt weak, and her nerves trembled. Artoria tried hard to say something, but when she opened her mouth, not a single word came out. Although Merlin saw tears in her eyes, she did not say a word. Tasting the girl's almost trance-like expression, the emotions that erupted in silence made the incubus, who fed on such things, intoxicated. Ah, it's really getting more and more interesting. Attempting to make this silence burn even more vigorously. So, the incubus smiled and spoke. That's right, Lily. He is the son of King Vortigern. Merlin said so. That gentle voice remained as ever, like a spring breeze. Alvin Pendragon. Chapter 32, 32 He has never deceived me. Even though it was a vibrant spring, it felt unusually cold. The plants were silent, as if withering away, devoid of vitality. Through the shallow clouds, a faint and chilly sunlight cast a gentle glow. The girl stood in the green field, her deep green eyes gazing toward the distant horizon through the forest. Her soft golden hair, still as radiant as the once brilliant wheat fields, swayed in the wind. However, this time, there was no one to appreciate it. A sword. The girl named Artoria tightly gripped a sword in her hands. It was a wooden sword, covered with mottled scars. It was the one he often used. The traces of wear on the hilt had become smooth, and holding it now, she could almost feel the warmth left by the person who once used it. Even though she knew in her heart that it was an illusion. But she wanted to find that illusory comfort. Unlike the sword in her hands, which always broke. His sword had never broken. He continued to use this wooden sword every day, patiently teaching himself day after day. Artoria gently touched every notch on the sword. The rough texture, like the scars of days gone by. These are indeed my doing, but I'm sorry, I'm not a knight, and I don't like being called a knight. Good person. Such a heavy word. In such this world, this is not a blessing that people can enjoy. We are peers, you can call me by my name directly. Just ordinary addressing is fine, just like that, try saying it directly. Alvin. Becoming a knight doesn't require anyone's recognition, Artorias. If you grab a sword while admiring the virtues of others, you should ask your own heart first. What is it that you hope to protect by becoming a knight? A sword that cannot kill, don't even think about protecting people. If the path is wrong, persisting in it 1,000 times is a futile act. Today, I will let you understand this truth. I'm glad to be your first friend, Artorias. Moreover, you will have more and more friends in the future. Don't belittle yourself too much. To live is to pursue peace of mind. No one is born with a certain purpose in mind, and no one is born to become a king, Artorias. Which means, before becoming a king, first become a human. The lingering sound echoed in the girl's thoughts. She gazed blankly at the distant horizon with her deep green eyes. Become a human? It's really difficult to do. Without your radiance to guide me, I can't do such a thing. Those sharp sword edges. Clearly, the gentlest things in this world. He will come to see me, I am sure of it. With a firm voice, the girl replied to the witch. So, she did not leave but chose to stand here and wait. Artoria waited, waited for the person who would come every day to practice swordsmanship with her. He never missed an appointment. However, until the faint dawn gradually dimmed, turning into the misty and faint light of the afternoon covered by grey clouds, Artorias stood there waiting, enveloped in misty and sickly light. "He won't come." A gentle voice sounded in her ears. That regretful tone, seeming to sigh and lament. The figure of the white-haired magus appeared beside the girl, both of them gazing toward the distant forest. The warm smile on his face was as familiar and comforting as ever. "Who do you think you're expecting feelings from, Lily? It's the heart of Vortigern's son. He is not human." The incubus's words floated lightly. Like elusive thin mist, it dissipated in the wind in an instant. Artoria remained silent, clenching her palm slightly. The magus lifted his gaze, looking at the faintly cold sunlight of the spring afternoon. A barely noticeable, yet joyful curve appeared at the corner of his mouth. Soon after, that gentle and coaxing voice continued to resonate in the girl's ears. "Alvin Pendragon. Last night, I tracked him, watched as he rushed westward. You understand what that direction means, right? Lily?" Indeed. The girl understood it better than anyone. The central fortress city of the island, once the glorious capital of Britain, had now fallen into the hands of King Vortigern. Was that place his home? "Your idol is quite surprising. He sensed my observation and chose to confront me. That sword technique, truly astonishing." The girl remained silent, the only sound being the creaking of the sword handle being gripped tightly. After so many days of sparring with Alvin, she could easily identify the sharp sword wound on Merlin's face. Dark, desolate, like a profound shadow. Undoubtedly, it was his style. "Well, it's just a small injury. Don't worry about me, Lily." The magus smiled gently. The curve at the corner of his mouth became even more pleasant in response. He just wanted to be seen by her. Therefore, the incubus intentionally chose not to use illusions to conceal his wounds. "Unfortunately, I wanted to keep him back then, ask him some questions, but he escaped. It's close to Londinium, and I couldn't pursue further. At this moment, he already knows he's exposed. With King Vortigern causing such chaos in Britain, if news spreads of the birth of the White Dragon's son, all the knights on the island will join forces to hunt him down. Alvin Pendragon. If you were him, Lily, would you come back to fall into the trap just to meet your archenemy? No, do you really think your idol, the Silver Star guiding the way, doesn't understand the stakes in such a foolish move? He might have already started gathering troops and is rushing towards us. Give up the illusion, Lily." The girl continued to be silent. The hesitation, the sorrow, the resentment, and the emotions rushing like tidal waves, wanting to question. All of it brewed in this silence. Like sour water, slowly seeping from the depths of her heart. She slowly, very slowly, closed her deep green eyes. Alvin, his goal. From beginning to end, it's always been you, Lily. To make her the ideal king. This harmless lie should be okay, right? Moreover, what he said was mostly true. Thinking this happily. On the surface, the incubus let out a soft sigh. The tone also correspondingly turned into a bitter and regretful lament. "Do you think your meeting was a coincidence? Do you think anyone can spar with you, the daughter of the Red Dragon? Do you think why he was so patient with you? Do you think the words he instilled in you were for what purpose?" With each questioning from Merlin, the words became more and more intense, and the content became sharper. "Alvin Pendragon, that cunning guy, he wants to erode your will, make your spirit lazy, and crush your determination to become king, Lily. He wants to pull you into King Vortigern's camp. Can you recall? Recall how he deceived your feelings in those fragmented words? Recall?" Suddenly looking back, the girl vaguely thought, indeed, she should have noticed it long ago. "I'm not a good person. You'll regret thinking that way sooner or later." Regret. The implications in those words. Those almost self-evident details. His swordsmanship, his origins, his appearance, those soothing words. But, she was unwilling to think about it. Deep down, avoiding such possibilities. Alvin, her idol. That kind of smile. Is it all a disguise? The hand holding the sword trembled. "Lily, face reality." The incubus sighed softly. In his deep purple eyes, there flowed a mist. Alvin Pendragon. Tasting the girl's rich despair and sorrow, like savoring the beauty of a flower. The incubus sighed with great joy and intoxication. He deceived you, he is a liar. Crack! The wooden sword held in her hand fell suddenly. The silver-haired youth reached out his hand, subconsciously trying to catch it. Then, the sword passed through his transparent wrist, gently falling to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. Merlin, do you know? The girl gently opened her eyes. Those translucent, gem-like eyes, as always, remained pure and clear. Her heart rippled slightly, as if it was about to overflow. But she diligently suppressed those hard-to-utter sorrows, like an approaching tide. Artoria just smiled. She wiped the corner of her eye and smiled gently. When I close my eyes, I have a kind of illusion. It's like my idol, just like before, standing in front of me. As her words faded away, that barely perceptible, joyful smile. Suddenly, it froze on the incubus's lips. The wind softly sang. Replacing the youth's hand, it gently caressed the girl's cheek. I have this kind of feeling, though it might sound a bit cheesy, Merlin. I feel that my idol, Sir Alvin, is watching me. Finally, it was the incubus's turn to fall silent. He smiled bitterly. Merlin couldn't accurately describe the sense of loss he felt at this moment. No longer joyful, no longer sweet. Only a shameful, indescribable bitterness, like making a mistake for the first time. The first time. The incubus felt his own foolishness. This ideal utopia called Avalon, which stood alone in the world. It also had something it couldn't isolate. He will come, Sir Alvin will definitely come. Until now, I still firmly believe. He has never deceived me, I don't believe he would deceive me. Because, he said. The dim clouds meandered. A clear breeze suddenly swept in from the distance, gently dispersing the accumulated clouds like a fluffy cotton candy. Suddenly revealing the early spring of Britain, the originally soft and azure sky. Bathing in this clear sunlight, the girl named Artoria, with a smile that bloomed like a flower. She said with such a smile. He said he would watch me grow up with his own eyes. Please witness it, Merlin. I will prove it to you. Chapter 33, 33 The pitch-black flower, blooming in this dark wilderness. As you gaze at the standing Artoria waiting before you, you reach out your hand to her. However, the illusory fingertips once again pass through the girl's body. Whether it's gathering and releasing magical energy or wildly rotating the magnetic field as the ultimate life form. You have tried this countless times, and also attempted to disturb Merlin next to you countless times. But cannot touch. You still cannot reach, cannot touch her reality. Damn it, Merlin, you can use the golden experience requiem. Now you finally understand, the damn incubus has the audacity to be fearless. Ensnared in this miraculous illusion, you seem to be isolated in another dimension. Desperation. Can't do anything. Boredom, annoyance, emptiness, loneliness, fear. In this eerily quiet place where not a sound can be heard. Countless noisy thoughts flood your mind as if in a deathly silence. Gazing at the splendid, unseen flowers blooming around you. You lower yourself, plucking one. This is the only thing you can touch in this world. The flower in front of you is so vivid, lively, and almost perfect. However, you glimpse a flaw. You are well aware that there is no perfect program without any bugs in this world. Naturally, magecraft is the same. But it's just an illusion. Since it's an illusion, then just cut it off, right? Thinking like this, you slowly sit down and reach for your sword hilt. However, when you draw the sword from its sheath, you realize the sword has completely shattered. It seemed like releasing a sword technique that contained the concept of deadly was extremely excessive right now. Even this fine iron sword couldn't withstand such a majestic magecraft. After losing magical energy support, it immediately disintegrated. You fall silent for a moment. You don't care. No sword means you can't cut. Is a sword such an inconvenient thing? Thinking like this, you slowly reach for the fallen wooden sword. The fingertips pierce through. Undoubtedly, you certainly cannot lift this sword in reality. If you can't touch reality, what about imagination? You close your eyes and, in your mind, imagine yourself slowly gripping this wooden sword. Cutting flesh, cutting souls, no sword in hand, but a sword in the heart. The moment you grip the sword of the heart, it's as if all distractions are instantly cut off by you. With a clear and empty mind, there is no longer Artoria in your eyes, nor Merlin. This is a trial. A person can only grow by overcoming their weak past self. If you can't even break through this frail illusion, how can you have the qualification, the determination to defeat Artoria's fate? You close your eyes, sit upright. Hands slightly clasped as if holding a sword. Downward slash. You swing the first sword. The world is silent, nothing happens. You can't see, and you can't even feel the existence of this sword. But you know, you are still holding it. And so, you devotedly swing the sword. One slash, to another. The faint light of dawn, the lingering glow of sunset. The girl's deep green pupils reflect the splendid crimson hues on the horizon. Immobile. She stands here, from morning till evening. The incubus, with a bitter smile, stands by her side, waiting as well. Today marks the third day. It seems, he won't come today, Lily. Gazing at the remaining glow of the setting sun, the Magus speaks softly. His tone is excessively gentle, almost tender, mixed with an imperceptible sense of guilt, as if afraid to disturb the girl's dreamy expression. Ah! Sir Alvin must be very busy. Artoria turns her head, smiling like a flower. Upon that bright smile, there is no trace of disappointment. Let's go back, Merlin. We can come again tomorrow. You won't wait like this, Lily. Then I'll keep waiting. Do you think what you're waiting for is Alvin? Merlin laughs bitterly. Even if you wait another year, you won't get what you're waiting for. He dare not say such words. Merlin has used up half of his accumulated magical energy over the years, and the noble phantasm released effect is enough to last for an entire year. Alvin is right. He is indeed afraid. Lily is destined to become a king. Otherwise, the quantum time lock will detect the deviation of the world line, and then lead to the erasure of this world. Unfortunately, but also to save the world. So, despite the guilt, Merlin cannot release Alvin. If Vortigern comes, what will you do? It doesn't matter. The girl smiles faintly, her calm voice devoid of fluctuations. If Vortigern comes, I will question him about where Sir Alvin is. You can think like that, after all, you are the Red Dragon, favored by world, and can find opportunities in any chaotic world. His tone becomes slow and solemn. But Kay, Hector, and those townspeople, what about them? Merlin knows better than anyone where Artoria's weakness lies. She is most vulnerable to this, moral coercion. The girl fell into silence. Along with the smile on her face, it slowly dissipated. She closed her eyes and gently opened them. The brilliance that was brewing in her deep heart suddenly dimmed. At this moment, cough, cough. Merlin suddenly covered his chest, a painful expression on his face, and he coughed up a pool of black blood. Merlin! Artoria panicked. What happened to you? My true body is being hunted by Morgan, your sister. Merlin said with a bitter smile. She cursed me. I'm sorry, Lily, but when I approached Londinium, she accidentally noticed me. Ah! Why didn't you say something so important earlier? I didn't want you to worry, Lily. Merlin weakly spoke, hoarse. Yet, why didn't he say it earlier? Because, it's fake. After all, he was an incubus, how could he cough up blood? But, oh, being hunted is true. That crazy woman has already turned the land of fairies upside down. Ah, it's really terrifying. But finding oneself is not that easy. Merlin is very proficient in his illusion skills. Right now, he is running just as fast with his mind split in two. The incubus's exquisite acting. Not to mention Artoria, if Alvin is still watching, he might believe it too. Hurry up and run. Lily, I can't hold on much longer. Merlin trembled, took out a handkerchief, and tried to wipe the black blood from his mouth. The concerned girl directly took it and began to clean the bloodstains for him. My true body is restraining her in the land of fairies. You also know what title your sister holds, right? If she catches up to me here, then, cough, cough. Merlin's weak voice stopped abruptly, interrupted by a fit of coughing, but the meaning was already clear. The unknown witch. About his half-sister with the same mother but different father, Artoria has already heard countless evil deeds. The consequences of being caught here are simply unimaginable. With guilt towards Merlin. With worry for her adoptive father and brother. Artoria finally took a last glance at his sword, lying on the ground. Slowly, expressionless. In the end, she withdrew her gaze. Let's go, Merlin. The girl's voice vanished in the wind, unexpectedly. Click. The wooden sword on the ground suddenly broke. Artoria turned around abruptly. However, at this moment, Merlin's large sleeves happened to brush across her field of vision. In this split second, the cracks on the sword's blade were instantly smoothed out by the magus using an illusion. What's wrong, Lily? The weakened incubus questioned, feigning ignorance. He glanced at the wooden sword on the ground. In those slightly narrowed, gorgeous, and mysterious purple eyes, a trace of incredible surprise emerged. Even though it was just a brief moment, he, actually broke free from the constraints of Avalon. How much more surprise can you bring me, Alvin? Too bad. Whether it's Vortigern or you, it won't change the ending of this story. Looking at the sword on the ground, showing no signs of damage, the golden-haired girl lowered her eyelids dimly. No, nothing. Maybe it's just my illusion. Artoria has left. You gaze at the girl riding a horse, accompanied by Kay and Merlin, embarking on that journey of asceticism. Their figures quickly disappear at the edge of the horizon. You did not follow her. You know that with Merlin, the magus of flowers, you cannot possibly keep up with her footsteps. Her departure did not cause even the slightest ripple in your emotions. You only regret not bidding her a proper farewell. But, since there was no goodbye, it doesn't count as farewell. You are very clear that you will meet again. You still sit on the wild field of the wheat farm, seemingly swinging the sword endlessly. In this space, you have no food to consume, surviving solely on breathing magical energy. If you do nothing, the constitution of the ultimate life form can keep you alive for more than 10 years without dying. However, you continue to swing the sword with a clear mind. This is a burdensome task for both the mind and body. 1 day, 2 days. 1 week, 2 weeks. In this endless sword swinging, your body gradually weakens. In this silent and desolate tranquility, a chaotic noise faintly hums in your ears. It is not from the outside but from your heavily burdened mind. You have collapsed on the ground more than once, bleeding from your 7 orifices, and then, relying on the constitution of the ultimate life form, tremblingly climbed back up. You continue to swing the sword. Not enough, it's still not enough. To shatter that thing called fate, even as the ultimate life form, you are far from qualified. Your vision gradually turns pitch black, extreme fatigue prevents you from seeing anything. But you still swing the sword. Tremblingly, swinging the sword that seems to not exist. How long have you been swinging it? 10,000 times? 100,000 times? Or 1,000,000 times? You've almost lost count. So, you start counting. 41, 43, 47, 53. You count prime numbers in your mind, trying hard to maintain your already precarious sanity. Just like your determination, prime numbers are something that cannot be split or shaken by anyone. In this endless counting, although your body is already unbearable, you gradually calm down. Your heart has never been so calm. In this empty and pitch-black wilderness, you seem to have found a sanctuary called void. The so-called void is also peace of mind. Living in this world, one relies on things called happiness and peace of mind to sustain life. So, what is happiness? What is peace of mind? You ask yourself this way, and then, in an instant, you get the answer. Happiness is picking up, and peace of mind is letting go. If you want to pick up, pick up. If you want to let go, let go. Even if it's destined, so what? Everything is an illusion, so what? If it's fate, shatter it. If it's a delusion, turn it into reality. Those who are awakened are always happy. Use anything useful, pierce through anything obstructive. You are the ultimate antagonist with full evil, and antagonists are often best at subverting. In pursuit of your own happiness and peace of mind. From now on, nothing can shake your will. The brain is about to explode and crack, nerves are about to completely collapse, but your nature as a prime number remains unshakable. In the endless pain, your spirit and determination gradually approach the touchable reality. You seem to see, on this pitch-black and lightless wilderness, the path that belongs to you. The so-called dark will is also the will that completely burns oneself. Facing this vast world, you swing the final sword. The night sky was cloudless, adorned with brilliant stars. Suddenly, without any warning, a shattered sound resonated in the void. A deep, dark flower, unexpectedly spread and bloomed on the empty grassland, exuding a mesmerizing charm. A silver-haired youth, his eyes closed, slowly emerged from the cluster of flowers. He was naked, with skin so pale it seemed almost translucent. His exceptionally beautiful and otherworldly face possessed a captivating allure. Alvin casually pulled a piece of shadow, draping the stars and night sky over himself. Named the ultimate life form, the son of the white dragon, he gradually opened his eyes. Burning. In those iron-grey pupils, it seemed like tumultuous black flames were burning. No more hesitation, no more wandering, and absolutely no confusion. You have awakened the talent Dark Will. Dark Will, born from your perseverance, your determination, and your beliefs. The white dragon's son unfurled his full wings, and all of Britain will bow beneath your feet. Your will won't waver anymore in pursuit of your goals. Like this land, extending from your hands. You gain near immunity to mental interference. You will shatter the so-called ridiculous fate that binds that girl. Chapter 34, 34 Breaking her chains, toppling her fate. The night fell silent, the darkness resembling a tale. Next to the verdant valley, a bright bonfire crackled. The flickering flames danced upon the delicate face of a golden-haired girl. Without a word, she opened her mouth, tore a large piece of meat from her hand, and chewed it silently. No joy, no admiration, just an ordinary meal to fill her stomach, a taste that used to excite her immensely. After experiencing the culinary skills of someone, her own cooking now only felt like chewing wax. Chewing on the roasted meat in her hand, Artorias' gaze seemed somewhat distant. No matter how hard she tried to erase it, no matter how much she attempted to clear her mind, she couldn't help but associate it with that name. The team ate in silence, as if trying to break the eerie atmosphere. The blonde and white-haired youths exchanged glances, deciding to start a conversation. In Cornwall County, beasts seem to appear more frequently than in our Essex County. Is it because Vortigern drove people away? But he doesn't use it. Could it be some major illness? As the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. Adhering to this philosophy, the three-person team advanced southwest into Cornwall County, now the southwest of Britain, a territory once tread by Vortigern. The Celts here were driven away, but Vortigern didn't occupy it, quickly turning it into a paradise for beasts and fairies. The golden-haired youth counted the days on his fingers. It had been almost a month since they left home and went on this journey. During this time, they learned various survival skills from that person who couldn't be named. Now, they could recognize strange mushrooms and were not afraid of poisoning. However, that person, their guide, still had a strong presence even though they had run away. Kay remembered those days with mixed feelings. Thinking back, he had also fought against Vortigern's son. Perhaps he could brag about it in the future. Although this was Vortigern's territory, with Merlin covering them, Kay thought it was unlikely their whereabouts would be exposed. Moreover, looking at Lily now, dressed in pure white knightly armor, her flawless beauty was emphasized. This outfit, while a result of Merlin's strange taste, showcased Lily's immaculate charm. Although Kay couldn't help but want to see it too. Well, Lily, you're getting stronger and more exaggerated. You knocked down that beast with just one strike. The blonde youth glanced at the headless corpse of the giant wolf next to them, which they were currently roasting its thigh. This foolish creature attacked them, aiming to leave no one alive, but Lily beheaded it with a single sword strike, severing its spine. Kay thought that if he were to fight, it would take at least a dozen rounds to bring it down. In other words, one Lily was equivalent to 10 Ks. Damn, thinking about it makes him lose confidence. Well, Kay, eat more. The girl managed to force a smile, casually responding. As an older brother, Kay could naturally see the distracted state she was in. In this past month, Lily had changed so much. Not only was her swordsmanship sharper than ever before, but her once radiant smile was nowhere to be seen. Every day, besides eating and fighting beasts, she tirelessly practiced swordsmanship. It seemed like she was attempting to empty her mind through endless training. The tremendous violence now contained in her body. Kay shuddered at the thought of how they got the firewood for today. Damn it, Lily broke a tree with a single punch. What kind of knight is she? But, as a brother, he couldn't bear to see his sister's gloomy expression. Whenever she looked down, Kay's heart couldn't help but tighten, and couldn't help but curse. Alvin! You deceitful scoundrel! You made me and Lily miserable. You turned out to be a scumbag who disappears when things get tough. It's just because your identity got exposed, right? Damn it, am loyal to the end, can't you believe that? Take responsibility for once. Kay cursed while roasting meat, aggressively poking the cooked thigh with a stick, as if cursing someone. The more he endured, the more he felt wronged, and the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He slammed the stick onto the ground. Alvin! Damn it! I know your dad is Vortigern. But, not like this too. Come on, let's fight again. I'll crush you. Crush your teeth. If you're still a man, get the hell out. Merlin, beside him, covered his face. Oh my goodness! I asked you to liven up the atmosphere, not become a disturbance. Meanwhile, listening to these words, listening to that name echoing repeatedly in his mind, Artoria tightened her thin lips. Her already dim expression became even more somber. The son of the White Dragon? So what? My Lily is such a beautiful lady, and she even carries the red dragon blood. Can't you match up to her, Gurug? The magus of flowers circled behind the blonde youth and directly covered that big mouth with his hand. Merlin lifted his head, smiling bitterly at the girl. Artoria shook her head, indicating that she didn't mind. If your emotional intelligence were any lower, people would take you for a mute. So I'm telling you, you don't understand women. What are you doing to upset a heartbroken young girl? Grabbing Kay's collar. Merlin lowered his voice, preparing to drag him away. Under the moonlight. If you observed carefully, you would find that the Magus's figure seemed a bit dim at the moment. Like a withering flower, losing its original vibrant colors. Because this was not his main body. The main body was currently in the land of fairies, engaged in a chase with Morgan, causing the clone here to struggle. That crazy woman, actually consecutively cast powerful magecraft, imprisoning the entire land of fairies. Merlin could only flee in embarrassment. These days, he had been bummed to the point of nervous exhaustion. Well, if he couldn't hold on, he would have to release Alvin anyway, since his goal had already been achieved. Dragging Kay towards the forest, he intended to repeatedly warn him not to mention that name. The faint voice of the girl echoed softly behind the two. I'm okay, Kay. Artoria raised her eyes, looking at the cloudless night sky. Every night. It was the same color as his sword. I will stand in front of him. That day is not too far away. Alvin Pendragon. Those smiles, are they sincere or just masks? I will confront him face to face with this question. As the words fell silent. Without any warning. Crack. The flower wand in Merlin's hand, the deep purple crystal embedded at the top, suddenly cracked in the middle, and then unexpectedly shattered. Snap. Merlin released his hand, and the blonde youth fell directly to the ground. With an expression that was moved, surprised, and almost shocked. Merlin incredulously lifted his head, looking towards the distant horizon under the night sky. What? This couldn't be. 1 month. It actually only took 1 month. He had used his full power to release a noble phantasm, consuming the magical energy that was supposed to imprison him for a whole year. That Avalon, the independent ideal land, the watchtower of the inner sea of the planet, the solitary tower like a sky trench. It was actually severed by him, Alvin Pendragon. Cut. Bathing in the bright moonlight. Brushing through the profound night. The silver-haired youth reached out, gently pushing open the courtyard's fence. The rough wooden fence emitted a teeth-aching low creak. Seated upright in the backyard, a white-haired old man had 2 lamps on the small table in front of him, gently rippling with the moonlight. Seeing the silver-haired youth entering, the old knight smiled gently. Sir Alvin, care to join this old man for a drink? Alvin did not conceal his own presence. Therefore, as a distinguished knight, Hector sensed the arrival of the guest. Like meeting the former king. The old knight solemnly put on the now rusty armor. Even though his hair was almost entirely silver-frosted, the old man sat upright, his aged body still robust and erect. Aren't you going to run, Sir Hector? Alvin slowly sat down in front of him. The youth's voice was as light as the elusive wind, instantly dissolving into the night. Run? If you were to chase me, how could I escape? If you don't chase me, why would I need to run? Hector smiled gently. They asked me to leave, but children still need a home to come back to. I, this old man, naturally have to stay here. I am the son of King Vortigern. Alvin Pendragon. Ah, I knew that a long time ago. The old knight's tone was full of regret and emotion. When I first saw you, I felt that you looked quite familiar. Aren't you afraid? Afraid? Hector laughed silently, shaking his head. If you're not His Highness's heir, I have no reason to be afraid. If you are, then I have even less reason to fear. Why do you say that? Hearing the youth's inquiry, the old man lowered his murky pupils, gazing at the clear moonlight in the cup. The old knight seemed to recall the days of his vigorous past. A prince, Who would have thought that the king and His Highness Vortigern would come to this point? Fate is truly a mocking thing. In my memory, that highness clearly had a very bright and gentle smile. Gentle? This was the first time Alvin heard such an adjective for his old man Vortigern, from someone other than Morgan or himself. The dragon-devouring light. Could it really be described as gentle? The old man lifted his gaze, casting a soft look at the youth's face. How should I put it? Truly, like father, like son. I can see that you are also a gentle person, Sir Alvin. Alvin fell silent for a moment. Let's consider this as your praise. Ha ha ha. Hector burst into laughter. He laughed heartily and cheerfully, as if he were not an old man at the end of his life, but the once vibrant knight. Even this shyness, and words that don't match the heart, seem to be carved from the same mold. Hector raised his wine cup, toasting to the moonlight. I'll drink to His Highness, please give him my regards. Alvin looked at the old knight, raised the cup, and drank the wine in one go. Your brewing skills have also given this old man a good taste. The old man put down the cup, smiling. I wonder how His Highness Vortigern is doing lately. That old man has not abandoned his lofty ambitions, and his spirit is as vigorous as ever. Good, good. Hearing that, I can be at ease. The old knight turned his gaze to the young tree sprouting in the courtyard. You have grown into an outstanding person, Sir Alvin. The era of Britain now belongs to you young people. But, even though you carry the white dragon blood, the road ahead is still full of thorns. Such a request might sound presumptuous, but this old man might not be able to accompany Lily in the future. I hope you can take good care of that child. The shadows swayed. The bright moonlight falling down was blocked by the branches and leaves of the old tree planted in the courtyard, dividing into two bunches. The old man sat in the shadow, and the youth sat in the moonlight. In the old knight's eyes, there was the gentleness he had described. I just hope that Lily can live a peaceful and happy life. Oh, so. The son of the white dragon, entrusted to take care of the daughter of the red dragon by her father? Alvin twirled his fingertips, gently picking up the cup. Thank you for your care during these days. It is my great honor that you trust me. Lily is a good child. Facing the moonlight. I cannot guarantee, but I will do my best. Breaking free from the chain, and tearing apart the fate. Today he knows, he is truly himself. The silver-haired youth finished the wine in one go and stood up to leave. I will do my best. To break her chains and topple her fate. Chapter 35, 35 Marry me now. You entrusted Hector to take care of his health and promised to visit him often in the future. You then walked towards home, your figure seemingly melting into the night. In less than 10 minutes, you swiftly covered hundreds of miles, returning to Londinium. Looking at the chaos in your bedroom, various styles of bold and shy lingerie scattered everywhere, as if experiencing a storm of washing and plundering, you felt a sense of worry. You were gone for a whole month. Trapped in that utopia, cut off from everything in this world, you could imagine how Morgan would be in a panic. After contemplating for a moment, you changed into clean clothes and walked to the top of the castle. Facing the high-hanging bright moon, you slowly raised your palm. You clenched your 5 fingers. As if a dog closing its sharp teeth. In an instant, that bright moonlight seemed to be devoured by you. The entire fortress city suddenly plunged into a profound darkness, even the illumination flames dimmed to the extreme. You activated the light devourer of the ultimate life form, swallowing the light of the entire Londinium, even if it was just for a moment. The dormant army in the city had no perception whatsoever. And the few soldiers on patrol only felt their vision turn black for a moment, then instantly return to normal. They looked at each other in confusion, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Such a drastic magical fluctuation in the city should surely attract Morgan's attention, right? Thinking so. Behind you, a dark door suddenly opened. A shadowy figure of a blue witch suddenly condensed, flying to you like a bird. She immediately grabbed your collar, as if checking its authenticity by feeling it. After confirming it was indeed you, the witch buried her head in your chest, her trembling voice almost hoarse, as if sobbing. Alvin! You felt cold liquid dripping onto your chest, soaking your clothes. Lifted the witch's tear-stained cheek with your fingertips. Sorry, I came home late. You said with a smile. The witch couldn't hold back her tears any longer. The blue lake overflowed, and those crystal-clear tears fell like broken pearl curtain strings. During these days, she almost turned the entire land of fairies upside down, but still couldn't find a trace of you. You disappeared suddenly. She almost thought she had lost you. If you didn't come back, she didn't know what crazy things Morgan would do. Comforting the witch in your arms. Your eyes gradually became cold. Merlin prevented you from bidding farewell to Artoria, but he didn't arouse this level of anger in you. Even though you pitied Saber's ending, how could Artoria compare to Morgan in your heart? Daring to make your own witch cry again. You buried this unforgettable hatred deep in your heart. No amount of torture would be enough to quell the fury of the ultimate life form. And you were about to inflict the ultimate insult and pain upon him. You've never seen the witch in such a disheveled state. Puffy eyes, disheveled hair, the delicate face covered in dust, even the once vivid blue lip color was no longer so vibrant. Her crying appearance was truly not that pleasant to look at, like a pitiful, abandoned puppy. Pinching her cheek, you gently adjusted her sobbing face, turning it towards yourself. Those teardrops on her cheeks turned into dried tear streaks in the cold night wind, appearing pitiful and lamentable. You took the witch's hand, smiling, and pressed her fair fingers against your own face. Your hands are still so cold, Lady Morgan. Then you should, warm me up more, Alvin. You lowered your gaze, kissing her lips. Tasting the salty bitterness on her soft skin. No need for any extra words, no need for any excess sentiment. With rough actions, you responded to her rough demands. All the restraints of reverence and forbidden feelings were silently broken, and all the accumulated or suppressed emotions began to silently release. On the top of the castle in the moonlight, clothes scattered on the ground. The witch's skin bathed in the bright moonlight, as if reflecting the warm and white colors of soft gem. You and her melted into each other, as if woven in the night, melting into the water. The quietude of this dark night couldn't conceal the burning hearts of the two. You brought her from the forbidden clouds to the mundane and fallen world. Since then, she was no longer a frightening monster but only a witch belonging to you. During the breaks in the passionate encounters, you carefully recounted the experiences of the past month to her. Hearing that you were trapped in Avalon, the witch's palm gradually clenched. Seizing the opportunity, you held her wrist, pressing her under the gentle moonlight. With the light devour skill in your grasp, your endurance was no longer comparable to the former you. No matter how demanding the witch was, you were confident in satisfying her appetite top and bottom. You exchanged heat with each other repeatedly, panting under the peeping moonlight, returning to bathe together in the bedroom, and finally sitting together on the loft of the castle to rest. The entire land seemed to be within your gaze, and the islands under the night sky were silent and peaceful. Morgan stared at the moonlight, her mouth carrying a long-lost, satisfied and happy smile. Indeed, you made the witch gain happiness. The moon was far away from her, but you were very close to her. You gazed at the witch's side face, the fair neck still carrying a blush, a very enticing aftertaste. You just told me not to risk my life anymore, not to practice so hard. Alvin said gently stroking the smooth silver hair of the witch. No matter how many times he had touched it before, it was always so irresistible. He shifted his gaze, looking out over the vast land below, and spoke softly. But, I don't find it hard. Just like Artoria, she also has something she pursues. You do too, and so does old man, even though I don't want to mention that name. Even Merlin, being an incubus, is the same. Everyone has their own happiness to protect, their own peace to pursue. And I, like them, am not exempt. I can sever the bonds of this land, unrelated to Artoria and even less to Merlin. It's just because within those rippling thoughts, there's a name that I've remembered from beginning to end. It is Morgan Le Fay. I think this significantly proves something. The silver-haired youth smiled and said, perhaps what truly makes people powerful is not the desire for conflict, nor conspiracies and bloodshed, but the determination to protect beautiful things. Looking at the brilliant smile on the face of the silver-haired youth, The witch of Britain was lost in thought. This seemed to be something more dazzling than the bright moon in the night sky and the intense sun in the day. Just like Alvin Pendragon at this moment. He already has something to protect, something that belongs to him alone, an irreplaceable treasure. And undoubtedly, this makes him full of determination. Facing the quiet midnight, Alvin raised his hand. The youth took down the moonlight, combing the witch's silver hair that reached her waist, smooth and neat. The youth pulled down the night, draping the witch in a dazzling skirt and veil like a galaxy. From the deepest part of his heart, the youth took out the ring that had been prepared for a long time, carefully carved. On the ring, the names of the youth and the witch were engraved. Facing the pure moonlight that covered the earth. Facing the stars in the deep night sky. Facing her surprised expression and the tears in her eyes. Magic gathered and released, and Alvin seemed to conjure a large bunch of black roses from his hand, embracing the thorny flowers that symbolized the witch in his arms. On the day of adulthood, I want to invite you as the leading lady to the wedding, Lady Morgan. In the embrace of these dark flowers, the silver-haired youth said with a smile. I want to have you, worn in my heart. No response. The rose suddenly lost its strength and scattered dark petals all over the sky. The youth was directly pushed onto the bed by the witch. I don't care at all about having a wedding, Alvin. Firmly. Domineeringly. Without allowing any doubt. The azure witch pressed directly on him. Leaning over to the young man's ear, teasing and panting. Marry me, now. Chapter 36, 36 This world is not worthy of my submission. The two children at home went on a journey together, and the fields at home were gradually abandoned. The old knight generously handed over the management to you. In your own experimental field and back at home, you now effortlessly traverse hundreds of miles as if it were as easy as putting on clothes or drinking water. However, the witch in the honeymoon period still cannot tolerate even a moment of separation from you. Since your sister has softened, there is no more battlefield of separation. So she joined your research, contributing ideas for your plan to produce grain in Britain. Work on the fields when there's something to do, and feed the witch when there's nothing. Morgan's unrestrained demands show no signs of abating. Rather, after you freed her switch, her needs are becoming increasingly fervent and daring. Whether it's in the bedroom, the bath, the forest, or the fields. Whether it's daytime, noon, dusk, or night. You spread moisture everywhere, causing the grass and trees in the deep forest to flourish, blending together as if glued together. Ambiguous and charming days pass by, and you seem to have entered into the calm and happy life once again. Spring turns to autumn, and soon it's the golden harvest season. You excitedly show Morgan the nearly mature and plump wheat. A few days later, it all withers and decays. Looking at the wheat fields that almost withered overnight, bathed in the bright autumn light, the fields present a bleak and decayed ash-gray color. Your planting has failed. Why is this happening? You and Morgan carefully examine the root system of the crops and find that due to absorbing excessive magic, they have accelerated their growth madly, skipped the mature stage, and directly entered the stage of decline. No, this is unreasonable. During the clock tower period, your research had already become very mature. Now in the age of gods, your magical abilities have made a qualitative leap. There is no reason to regress instead of progress. This is not a crude mistake you would make. And you visit your experimental field every day, the perception of the ultimate life form would not allow external disturbances. This kind of failure, you can't find any reasonable explanation. But you are not discouraged, nor do you feel disheartened. In the coming spring, you further expand the scale of your experimental field, carefully select more resilient varieties of crops, and sow them in batches. Time flies, and as you pick flowers in the morning and evening, you gradually hear about Artorias' deeds, spreading throughout the island of Britain. Slaying fierce giants, subduing tyrannical lords, annihilating the army. The pure and undefiled Night Princess gradually gains fame and stands out. It seems that her journey is progressing very smoothly. Suddenly, you are looking forward to the next meeting with her. What interesting scene will it be? Although the position of the Red Dragon's daughter in your heart cannot be compared with the witch, who is plowed by you every day, is most aware of this fact. On your clear determination, the name of Morgan Le Fay is engraved, and for Artoria, you have nothing more than pity. You can feel her feelings for you, but your intention to shoot down her fate comes from sympathy for someone in the same situation, not that thing called love. Just hope that in the next battle, she can withstand a few more swords. Autumn of the second year. Before the crops mature, they still all wither. You continue to improve your skills, even developing an all-weather temperature and humidity control system through the construction of Shadow Magecraft, making it impossible to have such superior farming conditions even in the 21st century. Autumn of the third year. The outcome remains unchanged. You silently gaze at the bodies of the fallen wheat spikes on the field, not uttering a word. The inexplicable failure of farming, the illogical phenomenon that attempts to create more fertile and productive age of God's varieties but inevitably decays before maturation, is something that cannot be explained by magic alone, but rather. Do not need to try any more, Alvin. Autumn light strokes, and the earthly scenery is clear. A babbling brook flows gently, red maple leaves flutter and fall. The autumn of the Isle of Britain remains as beautiful and enchanting as ever, like a timeless and magnificent painting. However, before Alvin, lies a scene of decay and demise. The British witch stands beside the increasingly tall silver-haired young man, her azure eyes gazing at the lifeless and ashen landscape before her. No need to blame yourself, you've done your best. This is not your fault. It's the existence of these crops that has been rejected. Rejected. Murmuring this word, the young man's voice is very soft. In the iron-grey eyes, there is no ripple. Rejected by what? Rejected by the will of this world, Gaia. Morgan lowers her eyelids, looking down at the earth beneath her feet. I've guessed the reason, Alvin. You should know too. Britain is currently undergoing the decline of the Age of Gods. Since the beginning of the Common Era, the connection between humans and gods has been severed. This is the inevitable trend. In the coming decades, the true ether on this island will gradually recede back into the inner sea of the planet. This planet will not allow the appearance of crops that can continue the Age of Gods, defying fate. If your research succeeds, it will save countless lives on this island, predictably delaying the decline of the Age of Gods. So, by the will of the world itself, your research has been rejected by it. I see. After the final gaze at the withering death before him, the young man holds the witch's hand, turns without looking back, and leaves. Let's go, Morgan, and see Hector. Next spring, we'll come again. I won't give up this research. The will of the world? Gaia. It is not worthy of my submission. You did not abandon your research but instead began seeking ways to break free from these fateful constraints. Similar to Merlin's seemingly perfect utopia, even the will of the world can never be a flawless entity. Proficient in debugging, you aimed to find the world's loopholes and inject the virus called the ultimate life form into it. As time passed, unlike you, the son of the white dragon hidden in the wild, Artorias' reputation was gradually becoming more and more prominent. Her various deeds kept reaching your ears. Rumors had it that she single-handedly repelled a surging tide of beasts and distributed the spoils to the suffering people. The pure and immaculate Night Princess traveled across the islands and counties of Britannia, warmly welcomed at every stop. Her noble virtues and outstanding achievements spread far and wide on this island, much like the infamous and wicked King Vortigern. Now, her fame was known to everyone. Many renowned knights admired her, and extraordinary individuals flocked to follow her, gathering behind her. Though only a 15-year-old girl, she gradually led a widely renowned knight brigade, upholding the ideal of equality for everyone at the Round Table, praised as the sacred and radiant knights of the Round Table. Under Artorias' leadership, the Knights of the Round Table began harassing and guerrilla attacking the army of King Vortigern, gradually slowing down the steps of Vortigern's iron cavalry conquest. This, in turn, led to the increasing prominence of the Round Table, forming a vast and responsive momentum. More and more Celts began to believe that Artoria was the destined savior to overthrow the cruel rule of King Vortigern. Truly, after parting for 3 days, a new perspective is gained. The girl who couldn't hold a sword in front of you, attempting to persuade bandits and even the king with righteousness, has now become a renowned knight, stained with countless blood on her sword. You understand that her rise is inevitable, with Merlin undoubtedly playing a significant role. However, undeniable is that Artoria, she has grown into an opponent worthy of your attention. Facing the arch-nemesis, the daughter of the Red Dragon, who gathered the rolling tides of this era, what has your old man, King Vortigern, been busy with lately? He's been busy celebrating his son's birthday. Chapter 37, 37 Have you ever disciplined me? Knights of the Round Table? Just a bunch of greenhorns. They dare to come, and I'll make sure they won't leave alive. As the devourer of light, how could Vortigern, the vile king, hold knights in high regard, especially those seeking fame and glory? A dead knight is a good knight. With the appearance of the Round Table Knights, local lords and vassals gradually formed an alliance, and recent battle losses didn't look good. But, what does the army's casualties matter to Vortigern? He didn't care about the life or death of the Saxons people, losses were losses. It's like cutting chives, new shoots will grow. On the other side of the sea, the Germanic tribes coveted the fertile land of Britannia. The incoming Saxons people would continuously replenish the king's army. In the end, these plunder-loving barbarians were just useful tools in Vortigern's hands, livestock not worth cherishing. If they come to Londinium, I might consider them. Those disturbances are just mosquito bites, not worth mentioning. Vortigern sneered. Because your coming-of-age ceremony is approaching, I return to give you a gift. I retracted the army's defensive line for your sake, but they really think it's their achievement. Only in front of his son would the king speak so softly. Never mind, what's there to talk about with these small fries? The tall and straight silver-haired old man sat at the table, smiling gently, waving to the young man. Come, Alvin. It's been a while. Let your father have a look at you. A helpless smile appeared on his face. Alvin walked up, bowed, and his father rubbed his son's head. You've grown taller, Alvin. I'm almost an adult, old man. As a dragonkind, reaching 1 meter 80 is pretty normal, right? Vortigern's sturdy figure already exceeded 2 meters. Alvin, inheriting the blood of the white dragon, reached 1 meter 6 when he was 8. People and artificial beings couldn't be compared in physique. Vortigern assessed the young man in front of him. Now, sitting down, he even had to look up. How time flies! Time waits for no one. Father still remembers when you looked like a baby in swaddling clothes. 15 years have passed in the blink of an eye. The old man's grey eyes lowered slightly. In a few days, it will be your coming-of-age birthday. Is there any gift you want? In these years, father is sorry. I haven't had much time to accompany you. Rubbing his son's head, Vortigern smiled gently. Could it be that you want me, this old bone, to accompany you in sword practice? Long time no see your swordsmanship. I'm a bit eager. In Britannia, who could still surpass Alvin in swordsmanship now? Perhaps only his old man, the king, could do it. Is it 10 rounds now? Or is it evenly matched? Alvin felt the outcome was uncertain. However, let's talk about these entertaining matters later. I have 2 somewhat unpleasant requests. But feel free to say. Do you still need to be polite for your adult ceremony gift? Alvin smiled. I want to marry Lady Morgan. As the words fell, Vortigern was visibly stunned. The old man's expression froze for a moment. Then, with a somewhat ambiguous smile, he glanced at the witch sitting on the side. Good niece, you. Morgan tightened her thin lips, glancing away, somewhat guilty. Alvin, I asked you to inquire subtly, not to be so straightforward. But then she thought, what's wrong with herself? No, why should she feel guilty? The witch stared back at him intensely. What's wrong with me? Morgan emphasized that word. Do you have any objections, old man? For her good uncle, Morgan had no respect. The full of vices King Vortigern, she didn't spare him any curses. The two of them were old adversaries, constantly bickering without stopping. Now, Morgan didn't bother acting, directly calling him an old man. With one foot in the grave, there shouldn't be any problem. The witch still harbored resentment. How did this old guy break her strong defense back then? She was still pondering. How could she not remember? Her mind was preoccupied with figuring out how to squeeze Alvin dry in various ways. But, on the contrary, her armor seemed to be getting looser. How to put it, Alvin might be lacking parental love, so he liked to suck her. No, can't continue thinking about this. Once a year, I can't return home a few times. My son doesn't care anymore. Thinking about this, Morgan said without good temper. Firstly, you are a father, and then you are a king, right? Vortigern, you're quite shameless. Truly, my good uncle. This time, it was finally the dragon that couldn't hold back. Unable to refute, he chose not to refute. Pretend you didn't hear it. Vortigern made a tut-tut sound and looked away, glancing at his son. It doesn't matter how it's arranged. Just give me a word. To marry Morgan, as Alvin's only relative in Britannia, of course, he had to seek his old man's opinion. He did indeed regard Vortigern as his father, wholeheartedly. The old man, upon hearing this, had a somewhat ambiguous expression, a smile that seemed to be a mix of amusement and irony. Can I say no? It's useless to refuse. After all, he is a filial son. The witch seemed to have a mutual understanding with him. It's useless to disagree. Alvin is an adult now, you old man can't control him anymore. Morgan walked up, pulled the silver-haired youth away from Vortigern, and embraced him. Indeed. Even though she touched him everywhere every day, unconsciously, the little guy she once pinched had grown so tall. He's a head taller than Alvin. It's a bit difficult to hold him. Sensing her struggling to close her arms, Alvin reached back and embraced the witch. Being affectionate in front of Vortigern, Morgan, as a niece, felt a bit embarrassed. However, the witch attempted to struggle but couldn't break free, so she let the young man hold her, blushing, and turned her gaze away. In terms of physical strength, those who could surpass Alvin in Britannia were few. The witch experienced this every night. Well, speaking doesn't work on this old man. Vortigern smiled, stood up, walked over, and patted Alvin's shoulder. You chose it, and I can't do anything about it. Choose well and treat her well. Okay. Alvin nodded. Didn't we talk about two somewhat unpleasant requests? What's the other one? I have a question for you, old man. You said that when I grew up, you would answer me. As the words fell, a lingering echo filled the air. The smile disappeared from Vortigern's face. The atmosphere in the hall seemed to suddenly become cold and silent. The candle light flickered but couldn't dispel the intense gaze of the young man. What exactly is the decline of the age of gods, father? He didn't call him old man, but father, because he was serious this time. No answer. The old man closed his eyes and fell into silence. Alvin just looked at him, quietly waiting. The witch clenched the young man's hand. The young man touched her smooth silver hair. The firelight flickered. But Alvin's determination never wavered. After a while, the old man slowly opened his hazy eyes, revealing a tired gaze. Not like the dragon. Just a father. Suddenly, the majestic aura of the so-called King Vortigern seemed to drain from his body. Do you really want to know, Alvin? You don't have to, actually. If I don't need to, I would be unworthy of being the son of the White Dragon. The young man stared directly into his father's eyes. Without understanding your perspective, I cannot truly understand your heart. The pain and responsibilities that King Vortigern has experienced, if born alone, don't you think it's a bit too much, father? Too much? The dragon that devoured light lowered his heavy and dim eyes. Originally, I indeed am Vortigern, the king known for his vices. People call me cruel and tyrannical, but so what? But you're different, you're still young, and you don't have to choose this path. What I am now is the future you can see. Even so, do you still want to hear the answer from me, this father of yours? Alvin. You don't care, and when have I ever cared? Alvin said softly. Whether you want to tell me or not is your business, but I want to hear it. A second round of silence. The rough hands with scars opened and closed, clenched and loosened. Vortigern slowly opened his eyes, staring at his son. You're an adult now, and your wings are strong. I can't teach you any more, Alvin. Alvin smiled, a genuinely happy smile. You've never taught me anyway. Chapter 38, 38 I am your only light. Listening to the silver-haired youth's smiling response, the sturdy old man could only manage a bitter smile. He raised his hand and gently ruffled his son's silver hair. Come with me. Since you insist so much, let me tell you about the truth of this cage called Britannia, the whole story. Holding Morgan's hand, you followed Vortigern to the underground where you were born. This place was covered in cobwebs, with dusty candle holders, seemingly untouched for a long time. The old man waved his hand, and a hidden door leading to a deeper place appeared in the underground. Descending along a spiral staircase, you finally arrived at a complex and spacious underground cavern resembling a maze. The rock layers here were densely filled with thick, tree root-like conduits, through which flowed a faint blue glow like fireflies. Is this the underground ley lines? Alvin immediately understood where they were. The clock tower also had the underground spiritual tomb of Albion, and even built the vast mining city of Magus Fair within it. Yes, this is the underground of Londinium, where a part of the thickest ley lines runs through the entire island of Britannia. Vortigern's voice echoed in the underground cavern. However, Compared to 20 years ago, the true ether flow of these ley lines has been reduced by more than half. Perhaps in a few decades, these ley lines will completely wither away. If they wither, what will happen? Alvin asked, already anticipating the cruel answer. Everything prosperous in Britannia now bathes in the true ether. It is a genuine object of the age of gods. The decline of the age of gods is like the arrival of eternal night. True ether, for us, is like the sunlight. If ether diminishes, the land will become barren, crops will wither, magical beasts will go extinct. Most people will starve to death, famine will spread, and people will be forced into cannibalism. The old man spoke softly. This island will become a literal hell on earth. Alvin frowned. He had experienced such a cruel famine era in his previous reality and knew how brutal it could be. So, father, is this why you want the age of gods to return? Yes, this is the only way to save Britannia. If that's the case. Alvin asked the question that had been bothering him for a long time. Why don't you make this information public? Instead, you bear it alone. If people understand the truth, no one would want to die. The whole Britannia would work together, and you wouldn't have to endure being blamed. Why subject yourself to public condemnation? It's not that I don't want to say, but I can't say, Alvin. The old man spoke each word calmly. The Celts are remnants of the age of gods. If they were to learn the truth of the age of gods' decline and it triggered a collective panic, it would further accelerate the decline of the age of gods. Such a thing exists. The witch was astonished. She knew that the decline of the age of gods was inevitable, a rule of the planet's rotation, but she had no idea of such secrets. Deadlock. This was undoubtedly a deadlock. Realizing this, Alvin fell into an unspeakable silence. Now he finally understood why his dad Vortigern had to shoulder everything alone, risking the wrath of the world, even willing to bring in the barbarians to usurp the throne. Yes, it was an unspeakable deadlock. At that time, Vortigern had no choice but to bear this cruel truth alone, because if he revealed it, all efforts would be in vain. Bury the secret, die a slow death, and perhaps seek a turning point. Revealing the truth, everyone dies together. It was a dilemma reminiscent of the trolley problem. Vortigern Pendragon. This man bore the weight of the entire era, enduring the cruel truth, bitterness, loneliness, growing in the shadows, honing fangs and claws. Misunderstanding. Resentment. Hatred. Prejudice. Even if he was pointed at by thousands, cursed by tens of thousands. Even if he was called the vile king, the dragon that devoured light. The infamous name spread throughout the island, destined to stink for thousands of years, an indescribable infamy. Vortigern, he didn't care. He was the white dragon of Britannia, possessing an unshakable will. You drove away the Celts for this reason too. Alvin said quietly. This is the central part of the island, where the decline of the age of gods is most intense. If I fail. Vortigern closed his eyes heavily. Running away a bit, they can live a bit longer. Silence. No music. Even breathing became difficult. The atmosphere in the underground cavern became nearly stagnant. Morgan stared blankly at her uncle. Though usually at odds, at this moment, she felt that this person was so unfamiliar. A sorrowful figure. She opened her mouth, wanting to call him, uncle. But nothing came out. Alvin stepped forward, gently patting his father's shoulder. You should have told us earlier, Dad. Even if we can't let the Celts know, maybe we can gather more advanced power and work together on this. Alvin had realized the turning point in all of this. If most people had to be kept in the dark, what about a small group? With such a position, perhaps the Red Dragon and the White Dragon can set aside their grievances and work together to save Britannia from peril. It's not that simple, Alvin. If it's just that, why did I have to fight with Uther, my brother who is indifferent but not unreasonable? The old man opened his dim eyes, sounding somewhat weary. The birth of the Red Dragon is the will of the world. The will of the world. Alvin heard the eyebrow-furrowing term once again. But he remained silent, just listening quietly. Listening to the tired voice of the old man. The quantum time lock of the world records the collective of all events on the timeline. In other words, those destined key points have long been engraved on the fabric of time. Because of human development, the rules on this planet will gradually evolve into ones more suitable for human survival. The decline of the age of gods is a destined event. The birth of the Red Dragon is also so. What if we change the mind of the Red Dragon? Under the interference of the world's will, even if she wavers, a new red dragon will be born again. If the flow of history deviates, our world will be pruned, abandoned, and stopped, at the end of that eternal night, a sunlight without any hope. In other words, the entire Britannia is imprisoned in this tragic cage called history. The old man's words were like the flickering remnants of a fire. In the depths of Britannia's underground, they burned. Alvin, this world demands us to offer our necks, demands us to die. Who would want to die? However, when the world wants you to die, you have no choice but to die. If you don't want to face it honorably, the will of the world will do it for you. It will build a tombstone for you, erect a grave for you. So, the elderly, aged white dragon shook off the graveyard soil from his body, grew sharp wings and claws, and let out the dying roar of a dragon in the tomb. The entire Britannia's resolute will was concentrated on Vortigern alone, a lonely sorrow named solitude for an old man on the verge of death. The age of gods was like the scorching sun. Decline meant the darkness and no light of the eternal night approaching. When the eternal night comes, I will start burning from now until death. I will not marry, not inherit land, not have children. I will not wear a crown, not fight for glory. I will faithfully perform my duty, living and dying here. I am the flame resisting the darkness, the dawn at the break of day. I am the dying ember of the age of gods, the last line of defense for this island. I will dedicate my life and honor to Britannia. Today and every day. In this dire situation of the approaching eternal night, an old man engraved the oath of a guardian in his heart. Then, he ultimately failed to strictly adhere to it. If I fail in the end, I want some of my things to be passed down. It is proof that I, as a person, once struggled. And then, you were born, Alvin. The old man lifted his hazy gaze. Although his figure remained strong and tall, this once King Vortigern had never appeared so hunched and aged. Whenever he was seen, he seemed as substantial as the earth. However, now, the earth was trembling. I never made any demands of you, Alvin. I always let you choose for yourself, and I never wanted to interfere with your choices. But, even if it's the final advice from a father. Not as the king, not as Vortigern, not as the light-devouring dragon, just as your father. Don't tread down the same path as me. Trembling voice. The old man's voice gradually extinguished like the flickering remnants of a fire. The witch stood still, in a daze. The silver-haired youth seemed about to take that step forward. Morgan abruptly grabbed Alvin's hand. Her face carried a dazed expression. She shook her head absent-mindedly. Listen to your dad, Alvin. Alvin stepped forward, gently kissing the witch's lips. Trust me. The warmth that always captivated people. Her stiffened fingers slowly loosened. Eternal night is approaching, so what? Even if it's eternal night, sorry, Dad, you can't teach me. Because I am the son of the fully evil white dragon. Slowly. Alvin slowly raised his hand. He raised his hand and ruffled his father's silver hair filled with frost. You've worked hard. If there is no torch fire from now on. Alvin Pendragon smiled. Well then, I am your only light. Chapter 39, 39 The best gift in the world. Stepping out of the spiral staircase in the underground, everything seen and heard before felt like a hazy dream. You chatted and laughed with your father and the witch, yet the atmosphere in the banquet hall remained somewhat stagnant and silent. He had understood your beliefs and comprehended your determination, but he still couldn't accept it. What father could watch his child embark on such a perilous path, challenging the world itself? However, Vortigern knew he couldn't stop you, the stubborn individual with wings. A bitter smile, reminiscent of an old father, hung on his face as he closed his eyes, remaining silent. With age comes a decline in appetite. Even though you personally prepared the meal, your old man found himself unable to eat. You beckoned, and a broken wooden sword instantly flew through the air, effortlessly erasing the cracks with a casual swipe of your hand. It was the sword you and Vortigern often practiced with during your childhood. Preserved with great care by you. Old man not feeling up to the meal, how about loosening up those joints a bit? You suggested, lifting the sword and pointing it at your father, Vortigern. Facing your provocation, Vortigern gazed at the mottled marks on the wooden sword, chuckling with a hint of dumbfoundedness. Seems like there's been a lack of discipline, otherwise, it wouldn't have come to this. Let me properly discipline you today, Alvin. The candle light dimmed for a moment. The light-devouring dragon slowly stood up. Perhaps, father shouldn't have let you practice swordsmanship. The robust figure of an old man stood on the combat field, holding a wooden sword. His hands naturally hung down, and his whole body exuded a suppressed aura, towering like an unmovable earth. There's no regret medicine in this world, old man. Alvin held the sword high with one hand, facing Vortigern with a sideways stance that seemed full of flaws. Using the sword posture I taught you, thinking you can surpass me? You're too arrogant, my son. Besides strengthening your weapon, I'll teach you a lesson without using magecraft. No magecraft? Old man, you're still playing tough. Arrogant or not, give it a try, old man. Then I'll test your mettle, Alvin. As the words fell silent, King Vortigern took a step forward. Thud. Despite being an incredibly casual movement, it suddenly produced a heavy roar. The step seemed to hit not on the training ground but in the depths of a person's heart. Crushed stones scattered, and the massive figure of the old man vanished in an instant. At the same moment, a ferocious slash, almost making a sound of breaking the wind, abruptly aimed at the silver-haired youth's neck. Then, it passed through. Vortigern's strike only hit the afterimage of Alvin. Without any warning. The daylight in the training ground was suddenly swallowed, as if plunged into a deep and dark night, enveloped in a gloomy and profound atmosphere. Light devour. Good, my son. Witnessing this scene, Vortigern's eyes revealed a hint of admiration. This skill, even as a white dragon, he understood the principles behind it. It took him until the age of 60, sitting in the polar night, to finally master it. The name of the light-devouring dragon began to surface from that time. Come. Yet, this alone is not enough to defeat your father. HMN. With the humming and singing voice accompanying. 8 figures appeared in an instant. The silver-haired youth's figure suddenly split, and in the blink of an eye, it simultaneously slashed at Vortigern from 8 directions. The sword in his hand emitted a solemn and mysterious sword light, slender and sharp like shadows. The interweaving of light and shadow made each figure seem incredibly real. The ultimate life form's supreme speed allowed Alvin to switch between truth and illusion in an instant. This is a technique he used before against Merlin. A momentary brilliance woven together by illusion and swordsmanship, called the instant bloom of death. However, this kind of petty trick was far from enough to deceive the light-devouring dragon, also known as the White Dragon of Britain. In an instant, he recognized the true body, and Vortigern abruptly raised his sword, slashing at the figure he was certain of. A sharp sound erupted again. Sizzle. Even without using magecraft, even with just the physical body. The violent strength of the white dragon, now towering like the earth, was not something a not yet adult ultimate life form could shake. However, Alvin completely did not dodge or avoid, facing the raging airflow and slash, the sword light directly targeted the weakest joint in the dragon's defense. Watching his sword tip, getting closer and closer to his son's forehead. Closer and closer. With Alvin's speed, he could undoubtedly form a prolonged stalemate, yet he still had no intention of avoiding. He wanted to exchange injury for injury. A slight tremor in Vortigern's heart, he suddenly tilted the blade, the sinking sword directly hitting Alvin's sword. This was a flaw. Hundreds of dark sword lights erupted suddenly, like a silent black rose blooming. Clang! A teeth-aching explosion, the figures of both sides passed each other. Morgan, who was standing on the balcony observing, was so nervous that she almost held her breath, gazing at the result of this father-son battle. Hiss! A bloody trace silently opened on the face of the silver-haired youth, and viscous red oozed out slowly. Alvin lost, didn't he? Morgan sighed, there was no surprise at this result. After all, the opponent was King Vortigern. The light-devouring dragon had been suppressing Britain for a full 20 years. How old was Alvin now? He hadn't even reached 15, let alone his coming-of-age ceremony, which was still a few days away. It could be said that being able to face Vortigern head-on was a freak that could not be described even as a peerless genius. I lost. The slow voice of the old man echoed, surprising the witch. Snap! The wooden sword in Vortigern's hand suddenly burst open, instantly turning into a pile of powder, lightly drifting away with the wind. You held back, I won unfairly. Yes, Alvin did it on purpose. From the beginning, he didn't think about causing harm to the other party. Instead, he aimed to destroy his old man's weapon. He was gambling. Betting that Vortigern would divert the blade. Betting on the father's gentleness towards his son. So, he won the bet. As Alvin said, this is truly an unfair victory. In a life-and-death confrontation on the battlefield, he could never win no matter what. Vortigern, the White Dragon of Britain, losing his sword might be his strongest true form. His hands were natural treasures, an extension of the British land. With a casual strike infused with magecraft, it echoed like the thunderous roar of a hammer, capable of shaking the whole of mainland Britain. However, this was a sword duel. The sword was shattered, and naturally, he lost. Unfair victory, so what? Losing means losing. Alvin, you seized the only opportunity you had. Yes. If it happened again, Vortigern would never fall for the same trick. Alvin seized the only, fleeting glory of victory. Reflecting deeply on this, the old man's voice carried no trace of defeat or bitterness. On the contrary, as he looked at the silver-haired youth before him, the accumulated frustration seemed to dissipate, and the knots in his heart unraveled. He lost but witnessed Alvin's determination. Amidst the endless brink of death, he earned that slim chance of survival. It was indeed an unshakable and worthy resolve. The best gift Alvin gave him in this world. With a son like this, what else could a father ask for? You've grown, kid. Vortigern said softly. His posture was straight, as if the earth itself stood tall from his figure. I admit, you now have the qualification to stand with me. I won't stop you anymore, Alvin. Do whatever you want. My old body will support you with all its might. But... The robust old man stepped forward, giving the grinning young man before him a fierce headbutt. Oof! Alvin held his head in pain, eyes seeing stars from the impact. No more of that. If I didn't hold back, your head is already shattered. Rubbing his face, he staggered for a moment. The silver-haired youth took a deep breath, finally regaining some clarity in his vision. It's nothing, just a small injury. He smiled, wiping away the bloodstains on his face with his fingertips. Under the influence of the ultimate life form's physique, the gruesome wound visibly healed at an eye-catching speed. The smile on the old man's face disappeared. All right, I was wrong. Old man, next time, I promise, next time. Alvin hurriedly apologized. He was always humble, never remorseful. Next time, for sure. Looking at the burly old man before him, now he even had a head on him. Well, he'd probably surpass him in a few years. Alvin raised his hand, gently rubbing the frosty silver hair of his old man. This time, the old man accepted it without any fuss. When will you pass the throne to me? Alvin asked. Get lost. Vortigern cursed with a laugh. Then I'll get lost. Alvin was ready to slip away. Better go and have a deep conversation with Morgan. The old man won't spill gold coins. He raised his head, gazing at the blushing witch on the balcony. Just at that moment, a sharp eagle cry came from the sky. Vortigern raised his hand, and a magnificent eagle landed on his arm, claws entwined with rolled-up parchment. A secret message from the frontline army. Report. The great sage Merlin has announced in Orkney County that the time has come. In 7 days, the king's selection ceremony will be held in Essex County, and the masses are in an uproar. How will your majesty decide? After reading it, Vortigern casually crumpled the message into powder. He looked at his son, a smile that seemed like a jest on his face. In 7 days, that happens to be your birthday, Alvin. I see. Alvin lifted his gaze, looking at the clear sunlight in the east. The golden fields of wheat and her flowing golden hair seemed to sway in his mind. The silver-haired youth smiled. Merlin. I really miss him. He truly delivered to me, the best gift in this world. Vortigern nodded. Such a grand ceremony, no need to think, all the named or unnamed knights in all of Britannia will gather in Essex County. How many troops do you want, Alvin? Your father will allocate an entire legion to you. No need, Dad. Facing the bright sunlight, the son of the White Dragon gently raised his hand. With his iron-grey eyes hollow, in those blooming feather-like pupils, it seemed like black flames were burning fiercely. Alvin spread his 5 fingers. Slowly, he slowly squeezed that sundae into the palm of his hand. I alone am enough. Chapter 40, 40 Disturbed Fate. The autumn light caressed, and colorful flags fluttered. It was still a softly lit morning. The border town in Essex County was already bustling. Or rather, it had never been so lively before. The news of the great sage Merlin conducting the king's selection ceremony here had spread, and the large square in front of the town's temple was already crowded with people. Some even climbed onto the roofs of surrounding houses for a broader view, just to catch a glimpse of the extraordinary demeanor of the future king. Countless renowned knights from all over Britannia gathered, their armor reflecting dazzling light under the sunlight, almost blinding the eyes of the residents. People chatted animatedly about the king's selection ceremony. No one worried about a sudden attack from Vortigern in such a gathering. Because all the talented individuals from the entire island were now gathered here, and the numerous knights provided people with a sense of security. Before them stood an impenetrable wall of Britannia. Even the vile king's armies would undoubtedly be defeated. The pupils of the people shone with the light of anticipation, but also, out of fear that this expectation might be shattered, they held their breath deeply. Suddenly, without any warning, a myriad of petals fell from the sky. The figure of the Magus emerged from the shower of flowers. Merlin! An unexpected call echoed, and instantly, the crowd became noisy. It's Merlin! The great sage Merlin has really appeared. Finally, is today the day we choose the king? The Magus, walking out from the cluster of flowers, smiled gently, his violet eyes shining like exquisite gemstones. And the incredibly handsome face brought by the mixed blood of Incubus made the faces of the women around the square flush. However, if one were observant, they would notice a faint, almost imperceptible scar on the magician's right cheek. Though not significant, it slightly marred his otherwise flawless beauty. Hello, everyone, that's right, I am the Magus of flowers everyone likes, Merlin. The conditions for today's king selection ceremony are very simple, and any knight can participate. Even apprentice knights are treated equally. Standing in the square, Merlin smiled while loudly announcing, once again stirring the crowd into fervent discussion. Then, as if materializing from thin air, he produced a luxurious sword engraved with Celtic inscriptions from his hands. With both hands exerting force, he forcefully inserted it into the massive rock in front of the square. Whoever pulls out this sword shall be the king of Britannia. His words echoed and lingered. The Magus's figure then dispersed into the wind along with the fluttering petals. Countless eager knights surged forward, hoping that they might be the chosen savior. The square instantly became chaotic, and people wanted to rush to pull out the sword, even starting to shove and fight. However, countless hands touched and pulled, but the sword in the stone remained unmoved. As time passed, more and more people failed. Witnessing those who failed with hands and feet, gritting their teeth, and flushed faces while pulling the sword, it did not budge even a bit. Disheartened faces appeared one after another. I know you're anxious, but don't be hasty, pulling the sword from the stone is not that easy. The remaining knights seemed to finally realize this truth, willing to follow basic order and form a long queue on the town's streets. However, until the soft morning sunlight gradually became intense, turning into the dazzling and scorching rays of noon, the sweating knights still had no success. Although the queue remained vast and mighty. Seeing the failure of countless people, the knights began to feel a bit exhausted, and their initially fervent hearts cooled down slightly. After all, becoming the king was just their wishful thinking, right? At this moment, cheers from the crowd suddenly resounded. It's Lady Artoria. The Knights of the Round Table has arrived. It's pure and undefiled Knight Princess. Lady Artoria. If it's Lady Artoria, she can definitely pull out the sword of selection. In waves of cheers, the queue of knights began to disperse spontaneously. Artoria. They had all heard of her illustrious reputation. Whether they liked it or not, they had to admit that if Britannia had to choose one savior now, it could only be her. People gazed as, at the end of the town street, a group of knights bathed in sunlight began to slowly approach the square. The leading golden-haired girl rode a magnificent white horse, and her delicate face showed no expression. Her eyelids were lowered, and her deep green eyes seemed to be permeated with indifference to everything in the world. She was draped in a luxurious azure cape, complemented by a pure white shoulder wrap. The conspicuous golden hair strand fluttered in the wind. Behind her head, the high-hanging sun burst into a holy and brilliant glow, highlighting her majestic presence, as if she were the descent of a savior. Artoria. People cheered for this name. Now, she was the well-known Knight Princess of Britannia. Engulfed in cheers, the golden-haired girl lowered her indifferent eyelids. Since the beginning of her journey, she never concealed her gender, even letting Merlin dispel all illusions about her. If I have to disguise myself for recognition, then I'd rather not be a false king. To rally behind me as a king but reject my gender, a ruler born from such deception will ultimately collapse in the midst of lies. Looking at the resounding girl before him, Merlin, with a bitter smile, respected her request. Yes, she was a woman, but so what? If not acknowledged, then prove it with facts, achievements, and virtues to gain recognition. It just meant putting in more effort. What she lacked the least was precisely that. Compared to indulging in lies, Artoria chose to respect the truth. For some reason, she strongly resisted falsehoods. The journey had indeed been arduous and difficult, but so what? In this world, nothing was more cruel than someone leaving without a word. Having experienced hell. Afterward, all the narrow-minded, prejudiced emotions couldn't touch her heart. Relying on this female body, she eventually gained the followers and admiration of the Knights of the Round Table. Even those who once scorned her gender eventually submitted to her sword and noble conduct. Victory, then dominance. This was the journey of the Knight Princess named Artoria. Whether knights or residents, people spontaneously moved aside to create a wide path on both sides, immediately making way for the girl on the white horse. The golden-haired girl rode smoothly to the center of the square, followed by the knights behind her, each with a name that sparked waves of cheers from the crowd. The Holy Knight, Lord Percival. Rumor has it that his long spear can pierce through a city wall in one blow. The Giant Slayer, Lord K. Heard he killed a giant with just his words, and he's even Lady Artoria's older brother. The Wolf Watcher, Lady Gareth. Transformed into a magical beast, she tore apart an entire army of invaders. The Knight of the Sun, Gawain. Said to be invincible when standing under sunlight. Agravain, who feels no pain. The Lamenting Tristan. The procession of the Knights of the Round Table caused waves of admiration each time a knight's face was seen. These knights, renowned throughout Britannia, each had extraordinary abilities, unique skills, and their willpower and endurance amazed everyone. In these days, they provided the unexpected surprises to the invading forces of the Vortigern. However, at this moment, these legendary knights, each known far and wide, all followed behind Artoria. Concealed by illusions on the rooftop, the incubus gazed at the dazzling golden-haired girl, feeling deeply emotional for a moment. Lily has really grown up. And she had grown up somewhat too fast, far beyond his expectations. That's right. These Knights of the Round Table were not supposed to appear here originally. However, the fate of destiny had already been disturbed. Such things were truly interesting. Merlin thought with great pleasure. His clairvoyance could still observe everything in this world, but now he couldn't accurately predict the future. Because he couldn't see Alvin Pendragon. Britannia had gained such a variable. The birth of the son of the White Dragon. It eventually led to a series of subsequent chain reactions. Merlin had already predicted the future many times. According to the past historical trajectory, these knights were supposed to gradually emerge and join the Round Table after Lily pulled out the sword, several years later. However, at this moment, before Lily had even pulled the sword, they had already gathered under her command. Knights like Gawain, Agravain, and Gareth were originally the children of that insane woman. Now they had become the children of the Duke and Duchess of Orkney, but their exceptional talents remained unchanged. During their travels in Orkney, they admired Lily's virtues and chose to follow her. Morgan was absent. Yet, knights like Gawain still appeared. Not only that, their strength had even become stronger compared to the historical trajectory. This was the correction from the world's will, Gaia. Merlin sighed. He did not allow the birth of a variable like the son of the White Dragon. Such a person, intruding like a virus, and the Round Table now gathered was the antivirus program of the world. Lily, too. Compared to the original historical trajectory, she had become even more powerful and would achieve greater feats in the future. The power gathered by these people would quietly drown out the inconspicuous son of the White Dragon. It seemed that his initial choice was correct. Merlin sighed and looked forward to the exciting scene when the girl pulled out the sword. The golden-haired girl rode on the steed. Facing the cheers of the people, her indifferent eyelids slightly lowered as she looked towards the sword embedded in the stone.
Thanks for listening.